The inheritors are Morlun's crew and family. The clan Morlun himself is also a part of. They're a powerful energy vampire clan which hunt down various totems and consume them. Because yeah, there aren't just spider totems out there apparently. I want to know though, are there anteater totems, and can I be one? Please write me into a comic as an anteater totem. Someone, please. Spider totems, for those who don't know, are spider folks from across the multiverse who are basically destined to end up being connected to the spirit of the spider, either possessing powers related to the spider or some other important connection which generally gives them purpose. The inheritors ended up getting control over the Master Weaver and used their knowledge and power to traverse the multiverse and hunt down spider totems within it. The inheritors are generally led by Solus or Morlun, and the clan has included Verna, Genix, Karn, Bora, Brix, Dara, Deimos, Malos, Mortia, Namura, and Thanos. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button? Seriously, it feeds the algorithm and it feeds my soul. Number 9. Miriam Drew, or rather, a bunch of Miriam Drews. Miriam's Drews. Many of them. An army of them. A clone army of Miriam Drews. Who was Miriam Drew, you might be asking? Jessica Drew's mother. In the previous Spider-Woman series by Carlo Pacheco and Pere Perez, Jessica had to face off against a bunch of her mom's clones, after learning that the woman whose base she was in wasn't really her mother but instead a clone of her. After watching her mom go from loving and considerate, seemingly having missed her daughter, to violent and aggressive, blaming Jessica for basically everything that had gone wrong in her life, Jessica then basically had to fight off an entire army of her mom's clones, ultimately. Like Jess at the time, her clone moms were also juicin', which also made them scary foes to face both in form and in power. If you don't believe me, read the series. Number 8. Zodiac. Zodiac is a blast from the past. He was a villain who was first introduced in 2010, but only recently reappeared in the comics, pledging to become Moon Knight's sworn nemesis. A very different vibe from Raul Bushman, honestly. Zodiac reminds me more of Joker or Deadpool when it comes to his antics. He's both brilliant, but also criminally insane. But it is his penchant for creative and deadly thinking that makes him honestly so dangerous. Like when he took on Moon Knight's ally, Reese, a vampire, not with a cross around his neck, but instead wearing his own name around his neck, as he clarified that it actually wasn't the cross vampires were weak to, it was faith, and Zodiac believes devoutly in only one thing: Zodiac. Number 7. Tyler Stone. Alchemax is a future villainous corporation from the 2099 Marvel Universe of Earth 928, but of course a corporation is only ever as evil as the people behind it. One of which is, of course, Tyler Stone, the vice president of Alchemax's R&D department. Tyler Stone is not only VP of Research and Development at Alchemax, but he is also secretly Miguel O'Hara's, aka Spider-Man 2099's, biological father. Miguel doesn't learn until later on that he is Stone's son, and ends up working for Alchemax as a brilliant geneticist. When he tries to leave, however, it is Stone who slips him the highly addictive and expensive substance Rapture, made exclusively by Alchemax, to prevent him from leaving. Fortunately, Miguel manages to free himself by becoming his own experimental test subject, accidentally becoming the spider-like hero, Spider-Man 2099. Number 6. Zombie Ant-Man. In the Marvel Zombies world, Black Panther was one of the sole survivors when the zombies first attacked, and turned most of his friends into zombified versions of themselves. One such former friend, Hank Pym, actually just managed to trick T'Challa into coming with him. Or well, he almost did. Either way, Hank managed to trick T'Challa enough to get him to a place where he could basically incapacitate him and then hide him away. Having already begun to change himself, Hank basically planned to use Black Panther, his friend, as a food source. Because Hank is a genius, which means when he's a zombie, he's a really dangerous genius. Hank kept him locked away and alive while slowly savoring and devouring his friend. Fortunately, Black Panther would escape and even become the leader of a land of survivors, although he would eventually turn into a zombie himself, much later on. But lesson learned, watch out for zombie Hank Pym if there's a zombie apocalypse. Number 5. Taskmaster. In the comics, Tony Masters is Taskmaster, and he is well known as an Avengers villain. And it is through his clashes with that team that Taskmaster also became a recurring villain of Hawkeye as well. Now, you might not know it to just look at Taskmaster, but the two have had some pretty epic fights over the years, with Masters himself also possessing marksmanship skills to rival that of, get this, Hawkeye himself, and also being known as a villain who is proficient with the use of a bow and trick arrows. In the comics, Taskmaster has an eidetic memory, or a photographic memory, that also extends to him being able to replicate pretty much any abilities or skill sets that he sees. So while he can also mimic Hawkeye's skills and abilities, he can also match the fighting style of pretty much anyone he watches, as well as learn their specific skill set too just from watching it, as long as it isn't a superpower specific skill like, you know, flying. Taskmaster is also known for being a brilliant tactician as a mercenary, and often uses strategic thinking to take down opponents who are more powerful than him, which is why he's one you honestly need to watch out for. Number 4. Zemu. Zemu is also known as the Living Hulk, and is a being that uses hypnosis powers to take control of others' minds. On more than one occasion, he has attempted to use these powers to try and conquer Earth and bend the minds of its entire populace to his will. In fact, while he's also attempted this feat in the pages of Immortal Hulk, this was also something he tried in his very first appearance. Back then, he was trying to mind control the human race in order to get them to build a ship to basically return him home. Doesn't sound like such an evil plan until you realize the force that the ship would have to create would basically rip the Earth asunder once that ship took off, due to the great force that it would need for that launch. So, pretty evil. Number 3. High Evolutionary. As we saw in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the High Evolutionary is truly a villain to be feared. And honestly, when I found out that the High Evolutionary was going to be in the MCU, I was like, man, that's gonna be lame, because on paper, he's another kind of silly character, especially when you consider that he's often used as a scapegoat for retcons, bizarre origins, and honestly pretty weird plot points. The fact remains though, the High Evolutionary, as the film proves, is truly the be-all and end-all of Marvel's mad science department, and the god complex he has in the MCU basically sums up so beautifully what is so frightening about him when you really think about it. He thinks he's perfecting life, when really he's basically warping and polluting it. Number 2. Thane. Thane is Thanos' son, and while he might not look that intimidating, he's definitely proven himself to be deadly in the past. Initially, Thanos was hunting down Thane because he feared Thane's potential power surmounting his own. He's basically afraid that Thane will rise up and overtake him, but in the end this wasn't something that Thanos really had to be particularly afraid of, it turned out. Even after he became empowered with the Phoenix Force, Thanos still managed to somehow defeat Thane, and this was also at a point when Thanos seemed himself to kind of be dying. Thane ended up being stripped of the Phoenix Force and ended up sentenced to suffering a hell-like existence in the God Quarry for the rest of his life. Or at least until some writer remembers he's still down there and decides to pull him back up again. Thane was also an Inhuman, and his powers are actually perfect for someone who is known to be Thanos' son, and are also pretty OP, I gotta say. He had a Death Touch ability that, while untamed, basically killed anyone within a certain radius, and he could also trap people in a state of living death through encasing them in amber, which honestly sounds awful. Honestly, while he's in prison for now, I'd watch out whenever he gets out of that God Quarry and is free again. Number 1. Monarch. I feel like we're always sleeping somewhat on Jamie Braddock here, and we honestly don't talk about him enough, so I'm gonna bump him up to the top spot this time around. Monarch to you. Monarch is known for his reality warping powers, and while not always a villain, most of the time in the comics he has basically been a villain. What makes him different from other reality warping characters, and namely mutants out there? Monarch's powers work on a quantum level, and although there are people who can influence Monarch's powers by manipulating his mind, he also is pretty powerful as someone who can basically just make things happen by thinking them into existence. Yeah. He is the elder brother of twins Brian and Elizabeth Braddock, but despite being related to heroes, he seldom is one himself. Number 10. Carrion. Carrion is the clone of Miles Warren, aka the Jackal. After Jackal's apparent death, he was abandoned and as such continued to develop at an accelerated rate while in stasis. When he awoke, he was therefore kinda like a living corpse. Despite being twisted and kinda gross, Carrion for a brief moment in time appeared to be a powerful Spider-Man villain. Carrion was a superpowered version of the Jackal who possessed a kind of death touch, which allowed him to disintegrate organic matter, such as Peter's webbing. He also fought with a substance known as Crimson Dust, which could be used to knock out his opponents or give them acid-like burns. While appearing as a shambling corpse and only lasting a few issues, Carrion was a strangely powerful enemy. Number 9. Kaine Parker. Definitely one of the weaker of the strong, but still, despite the fact that Kaine had a degenerative disorder and was kind of a mess when he first hit the scene, he's still got some pretty unique abilities that managed to make him pretty powerful. Also, just because you're kind of a broken clone in person doesn't mean that you can't also be powerful. Unique abilities that Kaine came with are the Mark of Kaine and his former precognitive version of Spider Sense. The Mark of Kaine is an ability that allows him to burn others with the touch of his palm. In reality, this is actually the little hooks in his skin that allow him and other spider folks to wall crawl. But Kaine's are a lot more intense basically, allowing him to burn his opponents with his touch or use his Mark of Kaine to cut his hair, which would actually be a remarkably useful ability to have had over the past year or so. I have not had my hair cut in months personally. His Spidey sense used to give him precognitive visions which drove him mad, but also gave him glimpses into the future, a very different kind of Spidey sense. And friends, before we move on to our number 8 spot, just a quick reminder, if you love this list and you want to learn about even more Marvel clones, let us know by being sure to give this video a thumbs up and comment down below and let us know. Number 8. Morlun. Morlun was the only inheritor we know of to escape the fate of being turned into an adorable psychic vampire baby who would be raised to be good. He was once the leader of the inheritors and is known for being a deadly opponent of Peter Parker and basically all of the Spider-Verse. Initially, he and his fellow inheritors were defeated during the events of Spider-Verse, but ultimately returned to Earth 616 after Genix, Morlun's brother, managed to hack into Otto Octavius's aka Superior Spider-Man's database and upload the souls of the villains who were currently trapped in Earth 3145 into Otto's spare clone bodies, granting them access again to the main continuity universe. Like the other inheritors, Morlun enjoys feeding on the life force energy of totems, which is why he generally preys on spider folk from across the multiverse who we'd come to learn in the comics were all connected via the Great Web due to their status as spider totems, changing the story of basically all of them really and making them into destined heroes and origins as opposed to accidental heroes. Morlun was temporarily depowered by Sin Eater who absorbed his powers, but after Sin Eater's death he got them back, so he's kinda right back up to the terrifying power levels that make him such a fearsome enemy and skilled hunter. Number 7. Wolverine. Laura Kinney currently goes by the alias of Wolverine, taking after her genetic old man, Logan, who is also currently Wolverine as well. You can never have too many Wolverines on Krakoa apparently. Typically though, we have come to know Laura under the alias of X-23, the codename she was given when she was produced as a weaponized clone version of the original Wolverine. Despite being a female clone of Wolverine, Laura is also thought of by Logan as his daughter. She was made using the genetic material of Wolverine and Sarah Kinney. Her mother was actually one of the scientists who was working hard to help Weapon X create a clone version of Logan so that they could repeat the adamantium bonding process, creating their own super soldier. Sarah was also punished for going along with creating a female clone against orders after all the male attempts had failed, and as such was made to be Laura's natural mother as well, having to carry the child to term in her own womb and giving birth to baby Laura herself. Laura's power levels are similar to Logan's, and she is also a highly experienced and trained fighter and assassin. Number 6. Scarlet Spider. Who could forget all the Spidey clones out there? After Clone Saga, I know I sure can't, and I don't think anyone else can either, because we got some genuinely awesome characters out of all that cloning that the Jackal did. One such fan favorite is Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider. Ben was at one point believed to be the original and Peter the copy in the comics, and for a time he actually returned to New York and led his life as Peter, with both thinking that he was the real Spider-Man. In the end, however, the truth came out after Ben sacrificed himself to save Peter Parker, and it was revealed that this confusion was all a part of an elaborate and villainous plot to ruin both Spider-Men's lives. lives. Ben, however, would return after the Jackal collected his remains and brought him back to life. And that wouldn't be the last time he'd die and be resurrected either. Like the original, Ben happens to have immense strength and similar powers to that of Peter Parker. Ben is also known for having some intellectual and invention know-how, and for his stingers and his impact webbing. Number 5. Stepford Cuckoos. The Stepford Cuckoos are the genetically engineered clone daughters of Emma Frost. They were created using her genetic material and made to basically be 5 different versions of her. Together they share a hive mind and were initially created with the sole purpose of being used as a weapon by the Weapon Plus program. While Emma Frost was in a comatose state, John Sublime harvested over 1,000 eggs from her to experiment with and ultimately created the Stepford Cuckoos. While thousands of clones were created, only 5 were released into the world by Sublime and the Weapon Plus program. Their names, as we've come to know them, are Esme, Sophie, Celeste, Mindy, and Phoebe. Later on, 1, then 2 of the sisters would die, causing them to take up the team names 4-in-1 and then 3-in-1. Actually, Stepford Cuckoos wasn't a name that they originally wanted, it was one that was given to them by other people. They actually wanted to be known originally as 5-in-1, just didn't stick. With the resurrection protocol in effect on Krakoa though, the 2 sisters the Cuckoos had lost previously have now been brought back to life, and now all 5 are together again and residing on Krakoa. Number 4. Madelyne Pryor. Some people continue to speculate on just how powerful Madelyne Pryor really is, but I believe she should be on the same level as Jean Grey, in theory at least. Madelyne Pryor is the clone of Jean Grey, despite the fact that every character seemed to dismiss their exact one-for-one appearance and similarity. Maddie would end up stealing Scott Summers' heart and become his wife after the death of Jean. I wonder what drew him to her. The 2 would live a somewhat happy married life, but only briefly. Eventually, Jean Grey returned back from the dead, or rather back from her comatose state, and Scott would choose to return to his hero life, unable to stay away with Jean back, abandoning his then wife and son. Madelyne became intensely lonely and depressed in his absence, and when she learned of her true origins, that she was a clone of Jean, made using a piece of the Phoenix Force by Mr. Sinister, she broke. This psychotic break woke within her a power and dark side, which ultimately led her to transform into the villain that we'd come to know as the Goblin Queen. Number 3. Genesis. Genesis is more commonly known as Evan Sabanur, the clone of Apocalypse. He was created and raised by Phantom X in the world, raised to be good instead of evil, making Evan more a hero, where the older version of Apocalypse was of course usually a villain. When Archangel as the Horseman of Death attempted to rise up and take Apocalypse's place after his demise, Evan was then unleashed on the world, the secret of his existence revealed. He proved to be invaluable in that fight against Archangel, allowing Warren to be successfully defeated. Evan has all the power of Apocalypse, but is simply just younger than him, so the only thing he really lacks at this point is experience. It is believed his powers and strength will eventually come to at least match that of the original Apocalypse. He has the potential to have all the powers of Apocalypse, depending on, of course, his own evolutionary path. So he might end up with some different powers, who knows. Number 2. Strife. Of course, clones have to be evil generally, and Strife of course is no exception to that trope. He is the clone of Nathan Summers, aka Cable, who ended up becoming evil and at one point making a ton of people think that Cable himself was evil, as they didn't yet know about Strife's existence. Strife is a clone of Nathan who does not struggle with the TO virus, meaning he doesn't have to funnel power to fend it off. Strife was created as a clone of Nathan when it was uncertain if the techno-organic or TO virus might consume the child and possibly kill him. Strife, however, would later get his name and much of his personality from the mutant villain Apocalypse, who kidnapped him and raised him to become his weapon. Strife is an Omega level mutant. Number 1. Omega of the Thanosi. Omega was acknowledged as being the most terrifying clone of himself that Thanos had made. He belonged to the Thanosi and was made of the combined DNA of Thanos and Galactus. So in case you've ever wondered what it would be like if Thanos and Galactus had a baby, well, here you go. Omega, however, was rumored to be twice as strong as Galactus, with the addition of as much power and capability as Thanos. However, he wasn't believed to be quite as smart or crafty, thankfully. Still, after he got loose, it took a pretty crazy team up to take him down that featured Thanos, Adam Warlock, Gamora, Pip, Doctor Strange, Moondragon, Spider-Man, and Janice Vell's Captain Marvel. That's a lot of people to take down one villain, I'm just saying.
Coming in at number 10, it's Pickles. I think his name alone just made me want to include him on this list. Pickles is what is known as a Banff, a race of demons who are basically little Nightcrawler-like imps, who possess similar attributes and powers as Nightcrawler and Azazel. Pickles himself lived inside Beast's van and was a backup in case anyone needed immediate transport somewhere, but he would later travel with Jean Grey and the X-Men in Jean Grey #1 from 2017. As a Banff, Pickles can teleport by displacing himself into the Brimstone dimension, travel through it, and then return to the original dimension at a certain distance from the point of departure. But unlike Nightcrawler, Pickles doesn't require foreknowledge of his destination in order to safely teleport there. But much like Nightcrawler, Pickles can stick to objects with the surface of his hands and feet, and he's got a sweet little prehensile tail. This little imp also possesses an unknown degree of muscle memory mimicry, which enables him to quickly learn and perform new martial arts with little instruction or training. He's definitely one of those few minor X-Men characters, but he's just so cute. Number 9. Gazing Nightshade. First appearing in X-Men Blue #6 in June of 2017, the Madripoor mutant calling herself Gazing Nightshade was part of a ruthless mutant vigilante group who were inspired by Wolverine called the Raksha. The group was stopped by Jimmy Hudson and the X-Men and eventually were invited to the X-Mansion. Gazing Nightshade has the really cool mutant ability of despair inducement, meaning whoever Nightshade gazes upon enters into a trance-like state of sorrow, fueled by their deepest regrets. And to make it just 10 times more metal, both the eyes of Gazing Nightshade's victims and her own eyes bleed when she uses her powers. I mean, that's not the coolest thing. She joins Polaris' makeshift roster of X-Men in X-Men Blue #25 in 2018 before going back to the Raksha. Number 8. Trinary. Shilpa Khatri first showed up in 2018's X-Men Red #1 as a new mutant joining Jean Grey's team of X-Men. Shilpa was a young mutant from India who developed technopathic mutant abilities, and first used them to top up the bank accounts of every working Indian woman using the money from 25 of the biggest earning CEOs in India. That's pretty cool. And while I think that's awesome and kind of hilarious, her father did not, and he reported his own daughter to the Indian Mutant Defense Force, which is where Jean Grey and her team rescued Trinary from. As a technopath, she has the ability to psychically control all forms of technology, such as computers, cell phones, and all that junk. Her limitation at this time is that she can only control technology that is in her line of sight, and her range is currently undetermined, but judging from other technopaths, she has potential to get much stronger. It just remains to be seen. Number 7. Gabby Kinney. We included Laura Kinney on the last list, so is it cheating to use her clone? I personally say no, because Gabrielle Kinney, aka Honey Badger and recently Scout, is just awesome. Like a little feisty killing machine with adamantium bone sickles and crazy regenerative healing factor, and that also improves her strength, speed, and stamina. Gabby first appeared in All New Wolverine #2 in 2015, and she had a long history that, just like her other clone sisters, intertwined a lot with Laura, her genetic sister, and Wolverine, her genetic father. As Honey Badger, Gabby was seemingly a favorite of her sister, and basically became a sidekick to Laura Kinney, joining Jean Grey's X-Men alongside her sister in X-Men Red #1 in 2018. While Laura went on to become the new Wolverine, Gabby would go on to become Scout, and one of the main Wolverine family members. Oh, also her and Jonathan the Unstoppable, an actual Wolverine, like the animal, shared an immediate bond, and he is basically her pet, which is both really cool and kind of hilarious. Number 6. Gentle. Although Nesno Abidemi, son of a Wakandan woman and a Russian man, first appeared in 2006, he was only a student at the Xavier Institute until he joined the X-Men in 2009's Uncanny X-Men. Because of his father, Gentle was never treated right in Wakanda, even by his own mom, which is a little hypocritical because, you know, she got pregnant with a dude, but whatever. He was raised at the Wakandan royal court and was sent to the Xavier Institute by Aurora Monroe when his powers first manifested. Gentle's mutant ability is muscle mass expansion, which allows him to increase his size and strength almost instantly. He's done battle with a Sentinel, and his strength is said to rival Colossus, with his resting strength increasing every time he uses his powers. Because of his poor treatment though, he suffered from psychological trauma, which caused him to suffer great pain and seizures. To help his condition, Gentle's entire body was covered with vibranium tattoos to prevent him from overexerting, and they essentially keep him alive, with the added side effect of looking sick. Number 5. Oya. When Hope Summers came back from her future travels with Cable, there were 5 mutants whose X gene and abilities activated. These 5 were known as the Lights, and they were the first mutants since the events of M-Day, making them pretty important. Idie Okonkwo was 14 years old, living in Nigeria's Delta State when her mutant powers of thermokinesis activated, causing her to accidentally burn down her village. She was almost taken out by the military until the X-Men showed up to save her. Now, under the direction of Hope, and with the consent of Cyclops, the Lights began training as a rescue team for any other new mutant manifestations. Idie's ability of thermokinesis allows her to alter temperatures around her, with the limitation being that she cannot simply create hot or cold temperatures. She can only rechannel pre-existing temperature, meaning she needs the presence of heat to generate cold, and cold to generate heat, and vice versa. Oya first appeared in Uncanny X-Men number 528 in September of 2010. Number 4. Armor. Hisako Ichiki lived in Tokyo, Japan with her brother and parents when her mutant abilities activated, and she joined the Xavier Institute. She first appeared becoming just a student and member of Kitty Pryde's Paladin Squad in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 in 2004, and would go on to become a member of the New X-Men after participating in Emma Frost's Battle Royale in New X-Men Volume 2 number 23 and 26. But finally, she officially joined the main X-Men team in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 number 25 in 2008. Hisako's powers are pretty cool. As you might suspect from her name, Armor can generate strong, powerful, durable, and impenetrable psionic exoskeleton armor around her entire physical body that augments her strength, endurance, stamina, agility, invulnerability, and durability. The power of her abilities are greatly tied to her family and bloodline. So, for example, the strength, power, and size of her psionic armor greatly enhances when her relatives pass away. Which, I mean, if she was a villain, that could go south pretty quick. But luckily she's not, so we're good. Number 3. Bloodstorm. This is probably a bit of a spicy choice for this list. Bloodstorm is none other than Aurora Monroe, only she is from a different universe. Earth 21710 to be specific. This version of Aurora was a thief living in the streets of Egypt when she attempted to pickpocket a man who turned out to be Dracula. She was turned into a vampire and eventually managed to free herself from Dracula's control and find new purpose among the X-Men. Unfortunately for her though, her thirst for blood overpowered her, which resulted in her ending at least both Beast and Professor X. But it could have been more. She was recruited by the Goblin Queen of Earth 91240 as one of her Hexmen, and they invaded Earth 616, where Bloodstorm decided to switch sides and help the time-displaced X-Men Blue team. She was eventually recruited to the team by Cyclops. Now this is obviously Aurora Monroe, and even if she is from another universe, she is still extremely powerful. But on top of that, she has all the powers of vampirism, including being capable of transforming her body into mist and a flock of bats, and using her gaze to hypnotize people into doing her bidding. Number 2. Genesis. Honestly, don't know how y'all are gonna feel about this one. Evan Sabanur was created by Fantomex as a clone of Apocalypse, and as such has a lot of his powers, including superhuman strength, superhuman durability, and self-molecular manipulation, meaning Evan has total control over the molecular structure of his own body, enabling him to alter his form at will. He is able to transform his limbs into various weapons and equipment such as blades and bludgeons for combat, or rocket boots for flight, as well as being able to alter his body to change in size. Evan also has a healing factor that can regenerate from serious injury like getting gashed by Daken's claws. And he can adapt his body to any disease or environment at will and sometimes subconsciously. Another small, innocent ability Evan has is the potential for virtually any conceivable superhuman power ever. He once showcased fire or plasma breath when fighting Faithful John's mind drones, and also has a degree of energy projection, able to project dematerializer blasts from his eyes and emit energy blasts from his hands. He first appeared in Uncanny X-Force number 7 in 2011, but wasn't on the X-Men team until 2014, and even then, kind of as a student. As the clone of Apocalypse, Evan will potentially develop any of the powers possessed by him, but it also means people do fear him, which leaves him with a bit of an insecurity. And number 1, Darwin. Even somewhat casual fans of the X-Men know who Darwin is, if only because he was that guy who is supposed to be able to adapt to anything but gets de-lifed in like 2 seconds in the X-Men First Class movie. People were mad. And honestly, yeah, so was I. That makes no sense. Adapt to this, shut up. He literally could have. He literally could have. Armando Munoz, or Darwin, was first introduced in X-Men Deadly Genesis number 2 in December of 2005, and he would join the X-Men shortly after that. Darwin's powers are just the coolest. He's able to adapt to any situation, so basically, using his powers, he's been able to grow functioning gills after being submerged in water, gain night vision after being in the dark for several seconds, be able to survive without oxygen when in space, his skin has become fireproof when it's exposed to flames, and after touching Hela, Darwin became a death deity and gained powers similar to Hela, including immortality, Asgardian physiology, and control over life and death. There was even a time his intelligence increased itself to understand the Shi'ar language by looking at it in written form, although sometimes his powers do not always take the effect he wants, like, for example, during his fight with the Hulk, his body teleported him away from the battle rather than supplying a power that would actually allow him to defeat the Hulk, which is kind of hilarious, to be honest.
Number 10. Captain Marvel. In the comic book Avengers issue 197, published in 1980, Carol Danvers, who is then known as Miss Marvel, discovers that she is pregnant. However, she has no recollection of how it happened, and the baby grows at an alarming rate. Shortly after that, in Avengers issue 200, Carol gives birth to the baby, who also grows up at an alarming rate, and names himself Marcus. The Avengers seem excited about the birth, despite the bizarre circumstances of it, and Carol is made to feel like she is basically overreacting by not sharing in their enthusiasm and excitement for her. As Marcus grows, it is revealed that he is actually the son of Immortus, a ruler of Limbo, not Magic's Limbo, but a different Limbo. Immortus, by the way, is one of the alternate timeline incarnations of Kang the Conqueror. Immortus had impregnated a woman he had plucked from time, Marcus's mother, and Marcus was trapped in Limbo until he could be born on Earth. Marcus had basically brought Carol to Limbo, specifically mentioning that she actually reminded him of his mother, a little weird, and used charm and his father's subtle manipulation devices and methods to impregnate her so that he could be born on Earth. Yikes. In the end, despite the large piles of red flags, many piles of red flags everywhere, Carol decides randomly that she actually feels empathy for Marcus, not knowing whether this is coming from herself or actually from his influence over her, and her friends and colleagues, her family, the Avengers, just basically smile and wave goodbye as she rides off into the sunset with the man who she is most definitely a victim of. Her lover turned son turned sort of love once more, Marcus Immortus. Oh boy. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love when we talk about some of the more questionable things that have been done in comics, be sure to let us know by clicking that subscribe button. Number 9. Photon. While Monica Rambeau may finally be seeing some appreciation in the comics today, this wasn't always the case. I would say she started off with a bang in the comics, but then shortly after was kind of shafted multiple times over. Needless to say, she did recently get a 5-issue mini written by Eve Ewing, no relation to Al Ewing by the way, which I am super excited to read, but I personally think Monica deserves a whole ongoing series all her own. That's how awesome and powerful she is. Number 8. Rogue. So, I'm not going to lie, I actually love Rogue's weakness. Former weakness now, I guess. Rogue was one of my favorite characters growing up, and I think what I loved about her so much was the tragedy of her story and her powers. But what's even more, I love the way that Rogue overcame them in the comics. Still, in overcoming her fears to gain full control over her powers, Rogue actually became kinda harder to write, I think. She's just honestly too powerful. This is why I feel like we don't get as many Rogue-focused stories these days in the comics. Sure, she and Gambit have their team-up series going on, but I was really hoping for a Rogue solo story during the days of Krakoa. Jonathan Hickman planned to write one, but ultimately decided against it when he agreed to hand over creative control to his X-Men team, as opposed to staying in charge of the main plot of the Krakoa era as the head of X-Desk. I still really want that Hickman Rogue story, and I'm hoping that we get it, because yeah, I feel like there's so much more we could do with Rogue in the comics. Number 7. Jean Grey. Despite being written as a powerhouse in the comics, Jean has a long history of weird choices being made for her character. And also initially she was basically just written to be a damsel in distress for a lot of the early days of the X-Men. She has constantly been killed off, in some cases to advance the story of her male heroic counterparts, whether that be motivating them to take some action or simply kind of freeing them from their romantic obligation to her. Number 6. Wasp. Janet Van Dyne. In the Ultimate Universe, Janet wasn't treated very well, but I'd also argue in the main continuity, Janet has had it, honestly, pretty rough. Initially, she was kind of like the sidekick to Ant-Man, and then it was revealed that he was not mentally stable, meaning that Janet, as his wife, had to put up with a lot, considering that Hank was later believed to be undiagnosed bipolar. Not blaming Hank for his own mental illness here, but just acknowledging that as a result, Janet had a lot that she had to live with as his partner and cope with. Eventually, the two do divorce, and then from a hero's perspective, Janet kind of slowly starts to fade away as Hank becomes less and less relevant. Number 5. Iska the Unbeaten. Iska is a super interesting character. On one hand, she's extremely powerful and can never lose. She can even potentially have her power utilized to manipulate the stakes of other competitions that she is pulled into herself. However, this also implies that there are times when she has zero control over her powers, in the sense that she cannot influence the result of an unbalanced battle. In fact, her powers will pull her to serve the side that will be victorious, regardless of whether or not she wants to, in terms of what her mind or her heart says to her. This means that Iska has been forced to turn her back on her own people, the mutants of Arakko, more than once. She's also had to fight against her own family and colleagues before as a result. Although the one thing she can control at times is how she fights in a battle, which I think is interesting. Meaning if she has the option, she can basically try to fight others involved as opposed to those that she's close to. Despite the fact that she has done her best by choosing her opponents to help mitigate how she might be used to turn the tide in a battle, she still is sometimes painted unfairly, I would say, as a villain, when really she is a strong warrior who simply sometimes has no say in terms of her allegiances thanks to her powers. I really hope we get to see more of her and get to dive more into how being forced to turn on her allies at times has truly, probably deeply affected her. Number 4. Wasp, Nadia Van Dyne. Janet even got replaced basically by her adoptive daughter, a younger version of the Wasp, Nadia Van Dyne, who was actually Hank's biological daughter from his previous marriage, who, well, he basically never knew existed. Nadia returned to the US after escaping the Russian Red Room, only to find out that Hank had actually died. She ended up bonding with Janet and ultimately taking up the Wasp mantle with her blessing, also taking her last name as well. I don't mind too much that Nadia is also now the Wasp. I just wish that Janet could also remain relevant while this was going on. In fact, despite Nadia also being a cool new character, I don't even think that she has stayed very relevant since her very recent introduction to the comic, which is unfortunate as well. Wasp is so cool, but yet we can't have any wasps that are super important lately. Number 3. Madelyne Pryor. I'm sure many of you at this point know how I feel about Maddie, but for those who don't, Madelyne Pryor is basically the evil clone of Jean Grey, who initially wasn't evil at all. She's also been known before as the Goblin Queen. However, the fact that Maddie was always shafted and then eventually realized that the choices made in her life were manipulated and orchestrated into happening by Mr. Sinister prompted her to basically have a mental breakdown, honestly pretty reasonable, and turn on those who she had once called her allies and friends. That's when she ends up becoming the Goblin Queen. Number 2. Scarlet Witch. M-Day has to have been one of the worst moments in mutant history. M-Day happened in 2005 in the comics as a result of Scarlet Witch striking out at mutant kind after the events of House of M, where she attempted to create a reality where many heroes were happy, but after learning of its falseness, was once again rejected by all those she had actually tried to help here. Pretty devastating, especially when, while Wanda was warping reality here, she was doing so in an effort to not only defend herself, but also make herself and all of her friends happy. In fact, I would argue her friends and teammates, the Avengers, were somewhat, and in fact I would say just full on, complicit in what happened, since they never really reached out to Wanda to try and help her when she was struggling emotionally, prompting her to warp reality, which ultimately led to her wiping out almost all mutants during M-Day. And if you don't believe me that that is the case, I mean, there's literally an alternate reality where if Jessica Jones was there, pretty much none of this would have happened, so yeah. M-Day happened mainly because Wanda was striking out at her believed to be father at the time, Magneto, who she claimed loved mutant kind more than he did his own family. Wanda said the words "no more mutants," and with that small utterance, depowered or destroyed millions of mutants the world over, an action that would cement her as one of the greatest mutant villains in comics for years beyond, despite her long-standing history before this working as a hero. Number 1. Wasp Ultimates. Oh boy, probably the worst one, I would say. pretty bad. Janet Van Dyne's death in the Ultimate Universe has to be, honestly, one of the worst things. First of all, we don't even show her enough respect to give her an on-panel death, as she drowns during the tidal wave in Ultimatum, one of the many poor victims who perished off-panel, despite, like many others, deserving an on-panel death. But really, when we're talking about those that deserved an on-panel death, Jan is really top tier. She's really high up there, especially considering Janet was actually the leader of the Ultimates at this point. So not only are we off to a bad start here, but then she also gets eaten by the Blob for some reason. It's also weird that they decided to make the Blob do this. I know he's a bad guy, I know he's a villain, but he isn't typically known to like be a cannibal anywhere else in the Marvel multiverse, pretty much ever. The Ultimate Universe had a weird and unhealthy obsession with cannibalism initially, at least, it felt like.
Number 10, Hawkeye. Now I know what you're thinking, Hawkeye is basically the Aquaman of the Marvel world because everyone just kind of brushes him off, you know? But trust me when I say that he is a lot better than you think. Although Clint Barton doesn't actually possess any superpowers, he has always been a major asset to the Avengers or whatever team he's on, honestly. Clint is a master archer specializing in any type of bow imaginable thanks to years of training, and he's capable of firing multiple arrows at once at a single target in a few seconds, hitting multiple targets in just a few quick strokes, and directly hit small targets in the greatest of distances. Not only that, but he is in peak physical condition for a human, has extraordinary eyesight, is an expert acrobat, and a master at many martial arts. As a part of multiple iterations of the Avengers, S.H.I.E.L.D., the Thunderbolts, and so many more, Clint has helped take down some of the biggest and baddest enemies in the Marvel Universe despite being a fairly average dude. There's so much more to this character that meets the eye, and I truly feel like he doesn't get all the credit that he's due, so check out his story for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1964's Tales of Suspense, number 57. Number 9, Catherine Pryde. Catherine Kitty Pryde was leading the normal life of an extremely gifted 13-year-old girl in Deerfield, Illinois, when she began suffering increasingly intense headaches. Little did she know that the headaches were actually a result of Kitty's mutant powers emerging, which is the ability to pass through solid matter. Professor X soon after located her and sought to recruit her as a new member of the X-Men, and she eventually received permission from her parents to join the mutant team. The youngest person to join the X-Men, she was first portrayed as a kid sister to many older members of the group, filling the role of literary foil to the more established characters. She occasionally used the codenames Sprite and Ariel, cycling through several uniforms until settling for her trademark black and gold costume. Thanks to her training with the X-Men, she was able to further develop her powers to make them even more useful, as she is now able to use her phasing ability to phase alongside other people, phasing the entire X-Men team once. She can also camouflage herself, and after having her potential released by the Black Vortex, she was resistant to telepathic effects. Despite this immense power, she is low on this list today because she is unable to breathe while phasing, and in order to phase through an object, she has to know it's coming, which has been exploited many times. Take a look at her powers for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1980's X-Men number 129. Number 8, Nightcrawler. The son of Mystique and the demon Azazel, Kurt Wagner was never legally adopted by anyone, but was raised within the circus. He grew up in Max Getman's circus, and his two closest friends were his quote-unquote adopted brother and sister, Stefan and Jermaine Zardos. Kurt and Stefan forged a true friendship as they grew older, and Stefan knew that his magical heritage might lure him to evil one day, so Stefan had Kurt promise him a blood oath, that if he ever killed without reason, Kurt would kill him as well. Long before his teleportation power emerged, Wagner had tremendous natural agility, and by adolescence he had become the circus's star acrobatic and aerial artist. He also possesses superhuman agility, the ability to teleport, and adhesive hands and feet. His physical mutations include indigo-colored velvety fur, which allows him to become nearly invisible in shadows, two-toed feet, and three-fingered hands. Also yellowed eyes, pointed ears, and a prehensile tail. He is also immortal due to him sacrificing his soul, which means there are no natural means of killing him anymore. In Nightcrawler's earlier comic book appearances, he's depicted as being a happy-go-lucky practical joker and teaser, and a fan of swashbuckling fiction. Nightcrawler is also a Catholic, and while that's not really emphasized as much as in his earlier comic book appearances, in later depictions Nightcrawler is more vocal about his faith. As a member of the X-Men and founding member of Excalibur, we have seen Nightcrawler use his abilities in unique and clever ways to battle Spider-Man, the Punisher, Jigsaw, Cutthroat, and so many more. Take a look at Kurt for yourself, starting with 1975's giant-sized X-Men number 1. Number 7, Jubilee. Born and raised in Beverly Hills, California, Jubilation Lee lived a pretty great life, honestly. Attended an exclusive school, and was believed to have potential to go to the Olympics for gymnastics. After one terrible night though, Lee lost both her parents and all of the family money, leaving her all alone. She was sent to an orphanage not long after, but ran away and hid in a Hollywood shopping mall, stealing food as much as she could to survive. Jubilee first discovered her mutant power to generate blinding and explosive energy fireworks while running away from mall security. The stress of running away from the security guards caused her to emit a large light energy blast while in a back alley, while completely disorienting the man and creating an opening for her to escape. Upon learning about her mutant ability to create fireworks, Jubilee realized she could earn money by using her powers to entertain customers and visitors in the mall, and that's exactly what she did for a while. Now, after the Reavers took over the X-Men base and captured Wolverine, Jubilee helped free him and escape, and the two quickly formed a familial bond through a father-daughter type relationship, and this was pretty much her introduction as a member of the X-Men. Now, obviously there's a lot more to her story, but I will let you figure out exactly what that is for yourself. Now, I briefly mentioned her powers before, but to go into a little bit more detail, Jubilee is capable of luminate kinetic explosive light blasting, which she has dubbed fireworks, and these can be used in many forms and for offensive or defensive purposes, such as hitting someone dead on or just blinding an enemy to escape. Check out her skills for yourself in her first appearance in 1989's Uncanny X-Men number 244. Number 6. Wonder Man. One of the Avengers' more troubled team members, Simon Williams. Simon inherited his father's company, Williams Innovations, and ended up running it into the ground with the help of competition from Stark Industries. He was later then arrested for embezzling funds from the company, giving him a bitter hatred for Iron Man that was then leveraged by the supervillain Baron Zemo in a plan against the Avengers. After being given powers by Zemo, however, Simon betrays him and chooses to fight alongside the team he once fought against, the Avengers. The exact nature of his powers isn't always clear, but regardless, this energy gives his body a massive power-up beyond the capability of normal humans, one of the powers being, of course, super strength. Wonder Man's strength is said to be on par with Thor and possibly even Sentry. I mean, he was literally able to knock Thor out once with a single punch, and this is a result of experiments by Zemo. Wonder Man is also imbued with ionic energy, giving him super stamina, speed, and agility, and also flight and superhuman reflexes, as well as making him pretty much indestructible. Wonder Man can also absorb various forms of energy, including antimatter, and is able to project powerful energy blasts at will, and can even exist as pure energy if he wishes to. Perhaps the biggest quirk of his abilities, however, is that he doesn't actually require any food, water, or oxygen to survive, thanks to his vast reserves of energy. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1964's Avengers, number 9. Number 5. Sersi. A member of the Eternals, Sersi easily ranks as one of the group's most overpowered members, and, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated characters in the Marvel Universe in terms of ability. Like many other members of the Eternals, she is tens of thousands of years old, meaning she has seen quite a bit in her time. She officially joins the Earth's mightiest heroes in Avengers number 314, partially due to her desire to protect humanity, but mostly because of her fondness for Captain America. Possessing the strength, speed, stamina, and combat skills and invulnerability you'd expect from the Eternals, it's said that the only way to actually kill Sersi for good is to scatter her atoms about. Also similar to her fellow Eternals, her ability to fire cosmic blasts from her hands. Sersi is somewhat unique amongst her peers due to her strong telekinetic abilities. What cements Sersi as one of Marvel's most powerful heroes, however, is her incredible transmutation ability, allowing her to reshape matter at a molecular level. She is considered a 5th level adept at transmutation, which is also the highest possible level, and she has used her power to turn a deviant to rubber, give the Avengers gills, and even disintegrate air itself. It also seems that she can create sentient life, bringing stone statues to life and turning inanimate objects into various animals and creatures at will. Check out her immense power for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1976's Eternals, number 3. Number 4. Gilgamesh. Often referred to as the Forgotten One, Gilgamesh's heroic exploits have become so legendary over the millennia that he's often referred to as heroes of myth, like Hercules and Gilgamesh, which explains why he just goes by Gilgamesh. He is one of, if not the strongest member of the hidden group of superpowered beings known as the Eternals, an ancient race of genetically altered humans created by the Celestials. Alongside his teammates, he helps shield humanity from the vicious deviants, though Gilgamesh seems to have a very soft spot for just protecting the people of Earth. He joined the Avengers in a time where their membership was at an all-time low, and although his time with them was pretty short-lived, he was an absolutely vital member of the team. While all Eternals are born with an inherent set of superhuman abilities such as super strength, Gilgamesh's strength far exceeds that of his counterparts, making him one of the most physically powerful characters in all of Marvel, with strength comparable to that of Hercules, Thor, and other godlike beings. As a result of countless millennia of training, Gilgamesh is also an extremely skilled hand-to-hand combat fighter, which, coupled with his imperviousness to damage, makes him one of Marvel's most dangerous characters. As is the case with most other Eternals, Gilgamesh can also emit deadly beams of light, heat, and physical force from his hands and eyes, and can manipulate matter to a limited degree. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1977's Eternals, number 13. Number 3. Squirrel Girl. Born to Dorian and Maureen Green, Doreen Green suffered a modification in her genes for unknown reasons that granted her squirrel-like abilities, which manifested predominantly in the form of a prehensile tail. When her parents consulted with a doctor, it was determined that Doreen wasn't actually a mutant, even though it was just kind of assumed that she was. At the age of 10, she discovered that she could communicate with squirrels, and that's how she met Monkey Joe, who encouraged her to use her powers and abilities for good. Her full arsenal of powers is kind of like Spider-Man's if you think about it, but with squirrel attributes as opposed to, Spidey powers. She has super strength, superhuman jaw strength, a regenerative healing factor, and of course her 3-foot prehensile tail that she can basically use as an extra limb. The best thing about Squirrel Girl though, in my opinion, and honestly everyone else's that I've talked to, is that she is so immensely kind and friendly, which somehow makes her more powerful. At one point, Doreen hijacked an Iron Man suit to head outside the stratosphere and face off against Galactus, and in true Squirrel Girl fashion, she is able to instead convince Galactus into letting her find a tasty alternative to consuming the planet Earth like a Thin Mint, getting him to admit that all the people in skyscrapers would just, hurt his mouth. She befriended the planet Devourer, and that is absolutely nuts. In addition to Galactus, she has also quote-unquote defeated Kraven the Hunter and Doctor Doom, something that not every hero can say. Check out Doreen for yourself in her first appearance in 1991's Marvel Superheroes Volume 2. Number 2, The Sentry. Robert Reynolds, aka Sentry, aka Marvel's dark answer to Superman. He's a superhero with a ton of powers, but he is constantly at war with the dark force within called the Void. So basically, when a middle-aged Bob remembers he was once the superhero of the century, he returns to his heroic life. When he finds out the Void, his archenemy, is returning to Earth. However, most of Earth's population has no memory of him. It's later revealed that the Void is a second personality within him, and that both personas have been erased to protect himself and the world. His powers come from a special version of the super soldier formula called the Golden Sentry Serum, and has given him the power of immortality alongside superhuman levels of speed, strength, agility, and stamina, as well as teleportation, flight, and just so much more. Sentry has been seen easily lifting 100 tons with little to no effort, meaning that if he really pushes himself, his weight limit could be, like 110 tons or even 150. Honestly, who knows? This is just speculation, but when you take into consideration all the additional powers that Sentry has, we think being in the top 5 of Marvel's strongest heroes is a fair ranking. Throughout the Marvel Universe, Sentry has been seen as a member of the New Avengers, the Mighty Avengers, the Dark Avengers, and even the Horsemen of Death, and every time he has been a vital member to the group. Check him out for yourself, starting with 2000 Sentry, number 1. And number 1, Franklin Richards. Sure, his parents are strong, Sue and Reed Richards, very strong, I think we all know that, but who knew that combining their mutagenic genes would create the most powerful being in the cosmos? Franklin Richards is a mutant who is classified as a rare and Omega level character. His most powerful characteristic is that he can literally warp reality as well as control the fundamental forces of the universe. He is one of the strongest mutants to ever exist, with powers equal to that of Celestials, meaning he is on par with literal gods. Unlike most other mutants, his powers actually manifested before puberty, and needless to say, wielding such a power at an early age gave cause for concern from his family, but Franklin has proven more than capable of using his powers since, and even made the Devourer of Worlds Galactus his herald. Honestly, feats of strength don't get any more bold than that, and given how Franklin still has plenty of room left to grow, it stands to reason that he could become not just the universe's most powerful hero, but its most powerful inhabitant as well. There's also an alternate universe where Franklin obtains immortality alongside all his original powers, which is just insane. It's just insane if you think about it. Check out his story for yourself in his first appearance in 1968's Fantastic Four Annual, number 6.
Number 10, Mantis. A new addition to the Guardians team, Mantis went from being Ego's roommate in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 to becoming an Avenger, even holding Thanos down while the rest of the team tried to take the gauntlet off. Now in the comics, Mantis had to endure quite a bit before becoming an Avenger. She made her first appearance in Avengers issue 112, The Lion God Lives. Mantis was trained as a child by alien priests, section of the Kree, who thought that she was destined to be the celestial Madonna. She was killing it in martial arts, hence the nickname Mantis. Now her real name is Brant, but Mantis sounds much more fun. No offense to all the Brants out there. Those priests enhanced her mind, giving her telepathic abilities, and on her 18th birthday, she was given the gift of a lifetime, when her mind was wiped and she was instead given false memories of her childhood as an orphan in Vietnam, to experience a normal life. Because that's part of the celestial Madonna route. Nothing builds that Madonna power more than some time in Vietnam. Right? And in doing so, Mantis learned to hold it down on her own quite easily. Number 9. Dr. Druid. Anthony Ludgate entered Marvel Comics in Weird Wonder Tales issue 19. He's a bit of a smarty pants, some would say. I mean, he got a degree in psychology from Harvard and then became a psychiatrist. But that wasn't enough for Anthony. He wanted to study the ancient powers of his ancestral druids. So he was studying the occult on his off time. He finally met the ancient one who passed down a lot of tricks, and Anthony left and became Dr. Druid, assisting monster hunters, including Mimicry when they went against deviants. So this guy goes back quite far. He's also a little more dramatic than strange, some would say. In Avengers issue 294, he manipulated Captain America's mind so that he would be the replacement chairman. And this was right after Captain Marvel was injured. What a snake. And before we continue on with this list of strongest Avengers you wouldn't expect, part 2, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be so helpful for our channel. It really helps us out a lot, especially while we're working from home. And if you haven't as well, hit that subscribe button maybe if you feel like it. I don't know, if you feel like it. Let's get back into this list. Number 8, Firestar. Angelica Jones made her comic book debut in Uncanny X-Men 193. She was born with, well, as you would guess by her name, the ability to generate great heat. Cerebro found her, but the Hellfire Club got to her moments before. She was learning a lot under the White Queen's guidance, honestly, unaware of the cruel nature of the club, of course. See, Frost actually gave her the nickname Firestar. So then Firestar joined as a reserve member in Avengers Volume 3, Issue 4. Yeah, so Hawkeye demanded that one of the 2 new members that they're recruiting has to be Firestar. He announced it to the world prematurely. He was that confident. The other members are like, whoa, let's hold on a second here, because that spot that we had open was actually for you, Hawkeye. But they settled on reserve member. That's fine, that's good enough. Now cut to issue 7, the former X-Men member became a full Avengers member. Firestar was also amongst the lucky 198 mutants to have kept their abilities after the Scarlet Witch decimated the mutant population. Number 7, Whizzer. This dude was only an Avenger for 4 years in the comics, but he's funky enough to mention. I feel like we don't talk about Whizzer enough. Robert Frank Sr. made his first appearance in USA Comics 1, and after a run-in with a cobra, he was bitten and his father had to use mongoose blood to try and save him the old-fashioned way, where he sucks the poison out. Some wives' tale, and it surely worked, but his father had a heart attack during this do-it-yourself transfusion and bit the bullet. Robert, on the other hand, was blessed with super speed after this, and then he became the Whizzer. Great name, great name. He joined the Avengers in issue 173 back in 1978, but he met his fate and Vision in the Scarlet Witch issue 2 in 1982. Number 6, Demolition Man. Dennis Murphy, born in Detroit, Michigan. He looked up to superheroes quite a bit, as do most of us. He was actually great at football, but he wasn't great enough to be recruited professionally. Sad times. But then that's when the power broker comes in to strike up a bargain. Super strength ought to help you with those home games, right, Dennis? Let's do it. Well, what happened was he got so strong that if he did decide to play football with these humans, he would probably break through them. His name is Demolition Man. Nobody would expect this guy to be an Avenger because he wasn't even the best football player. That's like what Peter Parker says. He's like, I couldn't do stuff then, so I can't do stuff now. You know? He joined the Avengers in Captain America issue 349. He helped Battlestar and US Agent free Captain America, and when US Agent and Flag Smasher started to get a little distracted, D-Man himself finished the mission properly. Number 5, Lightning. Living lightning, here we go. It's hard to imagine that a man made of lightning would ever not get the spotlight, but that's what happens when you share the pages with this team. Lightning, aka Miguel Santos, first came into comics as a villain, actually, but he joined the West Coast Avengers in issue 74. Now, his father, cut to way before, his father was part of this group called the Legion of Living Lightning, or LOL, as some would say. And when they tried to gain control of the Hulk, which is a terrible idea, his father was killed in action. Again, terrible idea, don't fight the Hulk. So Miguel wanted to learn more of his father in the Legion, so he broke into the Legion's headquarters, and while he was snooping around, one of the machines turned on, and he turned into a living energy. Now, he almost joined the Great Lakes Avengers at one point, but only because he thought GLA meant Gay Lesbian Alliance. I don't think Great Lakes are as exciting, but you never know. We have one over here, it's Lake Ontario. It's way too cold and smelly. No. I would much rather Gay Lesbian Alliances. The team had the worst luck when it came to recruits. Let's just say that. Number 4, Stingray. Walter Newell made his comic book debut in Tales to Astonish issue 95. Now his life began as an oceanographer and an engineer, and once he created a suit built for deep sea exploration, a cool nickname was bound to come afterwards. Stingray, there it is, that's a cool nickname. He was ordered to bring in Namor to investigate the disappearance of water from our oceans. He ended up working with Namor numerous times, Water Bros for life, and then he joined the team as a reserve member in the Avengers issue 319. Funny enough, in the Armor Wars storyline, Iron Man wanted to recover all these suits that had Stark tech in it. So he comes in, knocks out Stingray, and then after attaching the Negator pack, nothing happened. So the suit was indeed not stolen. You know, it's always nice when you knock someone out for no reason. I'd love to see him make an appearance in the Armor Wars Disney show, but I think we need a lot of other stuff first before we even look at Stingray. Although he is cool. Number 3, Jack of Hearts. Jonathan Hart, son of Philip Hart, a brilliant scientist who developed a liquid called Zero Fluid, and his mother was actually part of the Contraxian race. Now, the alien woman was also a scientist sent to discover this energy source to help their dying Contraxian son. Now, the alien lady heard about Philip Hart's experiments, so they met, got married, and then out came Jack. And then later on, when Jack was a teenager, his father had completed the Zero Fluid, but was sadly killed by the agents of a criminal corporation who wanted the fluid for themselves to market it. Classic bad guy stuff. Give us your fluids, let's fight. So when Jack hid in his father's lab, he was covered in said Zero Fluid, and then he started to glow and change and become more powerful, becoming the Jack of Hearts. Energy was just oozing out of his body. He handled his father's killers easily after that. He then joined the Avengers in Volume 3, Issue 43. Number 2, not one, but 2 guns. He's got 2 guns, the 2-gun kid. Let's talk about him. Of course, we can't forget this rootin' tootin' Avenger. Look out, gang, here he comes. Matt Hawk joined the team in Avengers 142. This guy's fun. Now, the cover alone, let's talk about this. The Avengers versus the wild Western heroes of all. Let's go, I'm gonna read this right now. He was a Harvard-educated Boston lawyer who settled in 1870s Tombstone, Texas, after the Civil War. Like the Civil War, not Civil War, like the Civil War. You get it? I don't really have to pitch what his life was pre-Avengers. I mean, there's horses, there's shooting, there's lots of nice boots. One day he saved the life of this elderly man. He was getting picked on by a rootin' tootin' gang. But this man just happened to be legendary gunslinger Ben Dancer. It's Ben Dancer. So Ben is exactly what you'd imagine in your head. I read all of his lines in Sam Elliott's voice because, well, of course I did. Look at him. So he, of course, trained Matt, and then when the Avengers fought Kang back in that era, so once the dust had settled, literally, the dust had settled, the 2-gun kid came back to the modern era with the team. And Hawkeye had a pretty good time as well. This is when he started to dig the West Coast life. He wanted to leave the Avengers because being a bow and arrow man made more sense to be out there than Manhattan. I have to agree. And finally, number 1, we can't forget about him, the Forgotten One. Gilgamesh made his first appearance in Eternals issue 13. He was born before the Ice Age, and in 3000 BC, the Eternal became Gilgamesh, king of Uruk in Sumeria. In ancient times, he would wander the earth battling tyrants and taking down beasts. He would fight alongside Hercules, and he even took down the demon dragon Zemu. He fought for the Roman Empire as a centurion, just taking out tribes left and right, and then he joined the Avengers in issue 300. And currently, he works alongside Hercules and the gods of war. Now, I feel like we're gonna see this guy soon in the MCU. I mean, the Eternals movie, Thor, Love and Thunder, bringing in some gods. The Forgotten One, no more, I have a feeling.
In at 10, Green Goblin. In his pursuit for ultimate power, Norman Osborn devised a plan to unite all of New York's independent gangs under his leadership, aiming to establish himself as the most formidable gang lord in the city. To assert his dominance and gain notoriety, he targeted Spider-Man as his chosen victim and dispatched 2 criminals, Scorcher and the Headsman, to eliminate the web-slinger. Their failure, though, led Osborn to adopt a persona reminiscent of a childhood nightmare, transforming into the Green Goblin. However, the chemicals that he used caused the Green Goblin to become a separate entity within Osborn's mind. As Norman's memories resurfaced, the Green Goblin persona sought to dominate him and defeat Spider-Man once and for all, this time employing a bomb filled with gas that nullified the hero's wall-crawling ability. However, Spider-Man outsmarted the Green Goblin again by leading him to a hospital room that had Norman's son, who was suffering from an overdose. Confronted with the dire consequences of his actions, Norman regained his sanity and returned to his normal state, temporarily, but of course, you can't get rid of the Green Goblin. You can't kill what's already dead. In at 9, Dr. Doom. Victor Von Doom, also known as Dr. Doom, is a Latverian politician and the ruler of the Kingdom of Latveria. He conceals his scarred face behind an iron mask and armor, and is renowned for his unparalleled intellect and scientific prowess. Doom is considered one of the brightest minds on Earth. In addition to his scientific abilities, he possesses formidable skills in sorcery, placing him among the most powerful magic users in the universe. So, I mean, with a slight caveat. I'll talk about that in a second. With ambitions of bringing order to humanity through world domination, of course, Doom had clashed with superheroes and cosmic entities alike. He is most notably recognized as the nemesis of Reed Richards and the archenemy of the Fantastic Four, which is probably where he's getting the street level title, and his initial encounter with the team involved capturing Sue Storm and coercing the others to retrieve the mystical stones of Morlun through time travel. He later manipulated Namor into joining forces with him in an attempt to destroy the Fantastic Four, but then, after sacrificing the reanimated body of his first love that he was using as a familiar, Doom gets her skin as his new armor, along with stronger magical powers, which he then uses to neutralize the Fantastic Four. Eventually, though, Reed ends up taunting Doom enough for him to anger the demons that he made a deal with to get the skin armor, which that's actually a thing. He was wearing the skin of his dead lover as armor, and as a consequence of angering those demons, Doom is taken to hell. This is not even a joke, this was an actual story, okay? And you all thought that Iron Man Jr. in the MCU was a weird storyline, okay? At least Peter didn't have to go to hell. Speaking of Spider-Man, and it ain't Mysterio. From a young age, Quentin Beck developed a passion for movies and special effects, fostering a close bond with his cousin Maguire Beck. Quentin's father may not have been successful, but Maguire's father supported Quentin's interests by giving him his first movie camera. With this camera, Quentin began making his own home movies and honing his skills in stop-motion special effects. As he grew older, Quentin became both an accomplished special effects expert and a skilled stuntsman. However, he grew frustrated with the lack of recognition that he was getting for his work. Desperate for fame, Quentin found inspiration when a co-worker jokingly suggested that he use his expertise in special effects to become a costumed villain and take down Spider-Man. The suggestion sparked an idea in Quentin's mind, pushing him down the path of becoming an infamous villain that he had always wanted to be. I have him on this list mostly because I wanted to be a special effects artist. I used to do stop motion videos. I got a camera and I started making really bad effect videos. This is basically me, except my name is not Quentin Beck, and I'm also not currently a supervillain, although I am probably going through my origin story right now. And at 7, Kingpin. The early life of the Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, remains shrouded in mystery. He's described himself as an unpopular and overweight child who later dedicated himself to bodybuilding, but that's yet to be really solidly confirmed. Growing up in poverty though, Fisk claims that his father was an addict, and that he committed his first kill at the age of 12. Fisk was driven to excel in everything that he pursued, believing that physical strength was crucial for gaining power in the criminal underworld. He extensively trained in various forms of combat and bodybuilding, focusing on sumo wrestling, and his interest in these things would shape other aspects of his life. Despite limited formal education, Fisk became self-taught, miraculously consuming books on various subjects with a particular fascination for political science. Recognizing the significance of intelligence, Fisk realized that using political techniques could help him organize and lead a criminal enterprise. And by the age of 15, his adeptness at administration and organization earned him the moniker Kingpin of Crime, where at 15, I was trying to remember where I put my phone, for God's sakes. I would not be able to be organized, let alone run a criminal empire, which is why I'm on YouTube and not Wall Street. Ha! And at 6, Rhino. Alexei, also known as Rhino, possesses a powerful armor that permanently was fused with his body. Resembling the hide of a rhinoceros, the scientists Igor and Gregory designed the armor based on a rhino's evolutionary traits for armored assault. Rhino's initial mission was to kidnap astronaut John Jameson, but he later turned on his employers and embarked on his own agenda. Spider-Man realized that Rhino had limitations in changing direction once he started charging, and exploited his lack of intelligence. Using his technical skills and agility, Spider-Man could defeat Rhino on various occasions, but sent him to a specialized correctional hospital where he was kept heavily sedated. Eventually, he ends up getting the skin dissolved, I'm pretty sure. Then he ends up getting the robot one that we also see in the Spider-Man PS4 game, and then in Miles Morales. But still, dude's a freaking Rhino, okay? That you can't really get more than street when you're a Rhino who's dumb and can only run in a straight line after you start charging. You can't really do more than that. You ain't gonna be fighting the Watcher, okay? Sorry, but it's true. Halfway through into number 5, MODOK. George Tarleton, also known as MODOK, the mental organism designed only for killing, was a technician working for AIM when he was transformed into a human computer by the Scientist Supreme. Yeah, I know, Sorcerer Supreme, Scientist Supreme. Come on, where's the Nachos Supreme? Where's the Fries Supreme? I want to know. I'm hungry, okay? I haven't had breakfast today. Relax. His brain was enlarged to grant him superhuman intellect, but his frail body couldn't handle the massive cranium, leading him to be confined to a life support unit called the Doomsday Chair. This process also bestowed him with psychic powers, fueling his ambition and ego. MODOK seized control of AIM and clashed with Captain America when he attempted to rescue Sharon Carter, and in the ensuing battle, AIM turned against MODOK and they all tried to escape. He initiated a self-destruct sequence, leaving them with only moments to escape the impending explosion, but a bigger brain doesn't mean that you're smarter. That's not how that works. If your brain gets bigger, you should see a doctor, okay? That's like an aneurysm or a tumor or something. Intelligence isn't the size of your brain. It's the wrinkles, I'm pretty sure. And if you like what we're doing here, also call a doctor. And also like and subscribe. In at 4, Red Skull. Upon becoming inspired by the Bellboy's loyalty, you're gonna censor it anyway, might as well say it fun, decided to mold him into the ideal German soldier and his right-hand man. Eager to comply with his superior's wishes, the bellboy, Johann Schmidt, accepted the offer. Initially, his leader's subordinates attempted to train Schmidt as a regular soldier, which enraged his, let's call him his dad, even though he's not his dad, but I mean, I could say it, but people here don't want me to say it. Let's just say dad. That enraged his dad, which had a different vision in mind. Taking matters into his own hands, his dad personally oversaw Schmidt's training, providing him with a lifelike Red Skull-esque mask and calling him the Red Skull. The Red Skull became solely accountable to his dad and embarked on various missions that involved spreading terror, particularly in the United States before its entry into World War II. To counter the Red Skull's actions, the United States government created the persona of Captain America, who would become the Red Skull's main adversary in their ongoing conflict. But I think you know who I'm talking about when I say dad. Getting close to the end of number 3, Taskmaster. Tony Masters possesses the unique ability to replicate any observed movement, allowing him to learn various skills rapidly throughout his life. As a child, he quickly mimicked actions such as diving and mastering sports techniques that he was seeing on TV, and therefore joined S.H.I.E.L.D. as an adult. Tony's life took a turn though when he encountered a dying scientist who provided him with a syringe containing a German soldier's version of the super soldier serum that Captain America had. Injecting himself with the serum, Tony gained additional powers but suffered memory loss as his new abilities overwrote his personal recollections. His wife and partner, Mercedes Masters, devised a system to control and guide him as Taskmaster, utilizing muscle memory and reflexive tasks. Mercedes also kind of served as his handler, helping him to stay focused despite his continually changing memory. Taskmaster's past with S.H.I.E.L.D. and his personal connections, including his relationship with Mercedes, become a distant to him, and his new persona kind of took precedence, which is why he becomes evil. But also, being able to look at someone and recreate their abilities or whatever would be so freaking sick. I mean, I would probably also end up using it for evil, but I mean, come on. That would be great. But ultimately, in number 2, Ultron. Ultron is just, he's a dude, and like, or he's not a dude, he's a robot, but like, he's just a robot dude who doesn't really do much more. I mean, he definitely can, but he was still listed on the wiki as a street level, so there you go, okay? You know the story of Ultron. We're not gonna talk about the one that fights the Watcher after gaining all the Infinity Stones, because that's definitely not street level. But hey, normal Ultron, yeah, that's pretty street level. Not Allmaker Ultron, I'm pretty sure that's one of his names. None of those, okay? Just the normal Ultron that was like corrupt Jarvis, that's street level. And you know what? He probably was just made out of a lamppost. And finally, in number 1, Carnage. Same reasons as Venom, kind of. I mean, like the fact that he's not really trying to destroy literally the galaxy is probably why he's considered to be a street level, despite also technically coming from space because he's the spawn of Venom. But also he merged with Cletus Cassidy, who was a serial killer. So yeah, after doing that, you're not really gonna want to do much else other than just kill people. So yeah, that's kind of it. A symbiote bonded with a psychopath who just wants to harm Earth, so you're not really gonna get much higher than the streets that you are literally turning red.
Coming in at number 10, we have Taskmaster. Let's kick off the list with a villain who is pretty well known and is actually going to be the main villain in the next upcoming Black Widow movie. At face value, sure, Taskmaster is pretty strong, but I wouldn't put him in the ranks of strongest of all time. After all, he can still be killed by conventional means, unlike Galactus or Thanos. But what makes Taskmaster so powerful is his ability to train others. On more than one occasion, Taskmaster has been in charge of training armies to fight against heroes. Now, because Taskmaster has his super drug, which allows him to have insanely powerful recall, and he is able to mimic and decipher other people's combat styles, he can use this to prepare thousands of people to take down heroes in the perfect way. He would know exactly how to fight them, and he can display all of their techniques because he already knows them. So it's not so much that Taskmaster himself is massively powerful, but it's the way that he can apply his skills. Coming in at number 9, we have The Natural, a brand new villain on the scene, so the potential of their own power is still unknown, but it would seem at the very least they can beat the hell out of some of the most skilled heroes that are already calling themselves Avengers. In the first issue, where we see The Natural take center stage, he comes into conflict with Bucky Barnes and the Falcon. The two of them are veterans of the hero world and should be able to take out a new villain with no problem. I mean, at first glance, The Natural looks like a 20-year-old with the brightest blonde hair and eyes you have ever seen. He looks like he should be on a K-pop poster, not beating the hell out of two members of the Avengers. Well, that's exactly what he does. And before we can get any more details about who this brand new villain is, he has to run off and we have no idea where he went. I think it's safe to say that this guy could be one of the Avengers' most skilled enemies in the future. Coming in at number 8, we have Stiltman. I mean, the name alone is super lame. You couldn't call yourself anything cooler like Dr. Tall or Towerfoot or Lanky Larry, anything. But even though Stiltman is super lame at first glance and doesn't have any real powers outside of his super suit, he's actually quite strong. When you go through the list of heroes that he has gone toe to toe with and actually created a lot of issues for, he actually starts to look like a little bit of a big shot. Mind you, he's not going to be ripping down reality anytime soon, but he might just kick Wolverine in the head so hard he gets a concussion for like 30 seconds. Coming in at number 7, we have Bessie the Hell Cow. I mean, we have to throw Bessie on here just because your average comic fan would have never heard of her. It definitely caught me off guard. How do you make a cow that is so powerful it constantly comes back from the dead and has been a villainous threat for nearly 300 years? Well, you have Dracula bite the cow and drain the blood out of it. Then the cow dies. Then the cow comes back to life as a vampire cow and goes on the loose trying to murder anyone that gets in its way. And this cow has all the regular tropes that vampires have, so you better believe that she's going to be drinking blood all the time. Also, she has the ability to move her soul into another cow's body if she gets killed, so in a way she is immortal. And what if she can move her soul into another creature's body, like something even more powerful? Coming in at number 6, we have the Hulk. Wait, why is Hulk on this list? He's a hero and we all know how strong he is. Well, I threw him on the list because even though his strength is known, his changes to the side of villainy are probably not as well renowned. There is an entire comic run, Planet Hulk, where the Hulk is banished from Earth and was supposed to live out his days on a desolate planet, but then he ends up becoming the king of a faraway world and then returns to Earth to lay waste to all the Avengers, and holy moly does he do a number on them. And there have been several times when the Hulk has turned his back on his pals because of one of his famous mood swings, or even became their enemy at a crucial moment where they needed him to be clear-headed. In the end, Hulk is only a hero for as long as his patience lasts, which is usually pretty long but can shift at any moment. Bruce Banner. We might as well follow one half with the other. Now, even though Hulk is way stronger than Banner, Dr. Banner is way more unexpected of a villain. I mean, he's been a certified hero right up until Jason Aaron had his run with him on the Hulk. This was where the Hulk had Dr. Doom separate him from Banner for good. Now you think this would be better for the both of them, but turns out Banner goes insane without the Hulk floating around in his head, and Banner as a villain is pretty powerful. He starts a Dr. Moreau island making a bunch of Hulk animal hybrids. An army of Hulk creatures is enough to make any member of the Avengers sweat, and on top of all this, he's one of the smartest people on planet Earth, so even though it hasn't happened a lot, when Banner goes bad, everyone should be shook. Coming in at number 4, we have Mojo. I don't know if Mojo is more unexpected or forgotten, but I think he slides perfectly into this spot on the list. Mojo is basically what happens when you give a CEO supreme cosmic power without any laws. Mojo is the ruler of his world and basically runs everything like a TV executive, creating more and more outlandish ways to create entertainment for his people without a shred of morality. But Mojo has been able to capture some of the strongest heroes and force them to compete in battles of strength, so he can keep his ratings at an all-time high. Coming at number 3, we have Venom. Once again, another villain who packs a punch but usually operates in the realm of manageability. Like if Venom is on the loose, you don't call in the Avengers A-Team. You send in the East Coast Avengers to deal with them and then you call it a day. But here's the thing, symbiotes can sometimes get stronger over time and their strength is very much attached to the person they bond to. For instance, there was one occasion where Venom combined with Red Hulk and Ghost Rider to make one of the most incredible comic book fantasies I could ever dream of. So for his day-to-day endeavors, Venom is a cool villain with an amazing backstory and a decent power level, but when you get into some of the all-time most powerful things that he has ever done, he is pretty amazing. Coming into the number 2 spot, we have Juggernaut. The first YouTube video I ever watched was a dubbed episode of X-Men, and I still remember it. It highlighted the Juggernaut in the best way, but even though we know the Juggernaut is strong as hell, he's not the strongest in the universe kind of strong. He's able to take on some of the stronger Marvel heroes like Thor, but he can also be bested by the likes of Spider-Man. But here's the thing, the Juggernaut's power level tends to fluctuate a lot. He gets his juice from the Crimson Gem of Sidorak, which is basically powered by a god from another dimension. On one occasion, Kaine Parker, aka the Juggernaut, was able to tap into the full potential of this gem and became a being so powerful he could crack through realities with a punch. He was also 100 feet tall, so as you can imagine, he was quite the tough villain to take down. In fact, if he never lost touch with the true strength of that gem, he might have been supreme overlord of all the Marvel universe. And coming out of the number 1 spot, we have Absorbing Man. At face value, Absorbing Man is a brute who can suck in some metal and punch dudes in the face. It's a very simple skill, but here's the thing about Absorbing Man, his powers are actually magical, so that means he can absorb things that work outside of the realm of reality. He is able to absorb energy from magical weapons, and he's also been able to absorb Ultron. Wait, what? Yeah, you know that powerful robot that almost killed the Avengers like 100 times and was actually successful on a few occasions in other timelines? Well, Absorbing Man sucked him in and then was able to absorb knowledge and basically became the most powerful creature on the planet by far. So who would have thought that some low tier criminal would be able to get to such a high power level? That is way over 9,000.
Number 10, Arakko Prime. While Arakko is a place, it's also a mutant itself. Arakko is the island nation that split off from Okara, creating two separate entities, Krakoa and itself Arakko. Arakko is where the mutants of that side of the land resided, but it also itself is a sentient piece of land and a mutant, much like Krakoa. Initially, Krakoa and Arakko were attempted to be reunited following the events of Ten of Swords and the Otherworld tournament, after Amenth was defeated and Arakko and Krakoa were free to join together again. However, Arakko and Krakoa realized that the years had greatly changed them both. They no longer even spoke the same language, and so Arakko and Krakoa decided to remain separate entities, and in the end, Arakko and many of the mutants of its land ended up being sent up to Mars to give them a fresh start and keep their more warfaring violent ways a safe distance away from the Earth. Number 9. Korra of the Burning Heart. Korra of the Burning Heart ended up joining up with Cable and his resurrected team of exterminators. Korra was the only Iraqi mutant to appear on the team. She appeared alongside Cable and the other exterminators in Cable Reloaded Annihilation, which is a part of Al Ewing's The Last Annihilation story, spanning across various titles, which sees the cosmic heroes of Marvel unite to take on Dormammu. Korra herself is basically a furnace of power and can use her energy to give others a power boost. Although because she is from Arakko, she typically prefers to keep her energy for herself to use to bolster her own strength and her own abilities. Cable had to encourage her to share. Korra ends up being recruited into Sword at the end of her adventure with Cable and the Exterminators, but I think it's safe to assume she likely goes back and forth between Sword's home base of the Peak and planet Arakko, aka Mars. Number 8. Idol the Future Seer. You might know Destiny, you may even know her supposed descendant Blindfold when it comes to mutant seers, but if you haven't been keeping up with the going-ons of current comics and everything happening in Krakoa, you probably won't know Idol. Idol is from Arakko and is a powerful seer. So powerful in fact that she is even considered an Omega level mutant. She lost her tongue to Tarn the Uncaring, a pretty evil Iraqi mutant, but did maintain her gift of prophecy. The last prophecy she spoke of was the eventual reunion but permanent separation of Krakoa and Arakko, which of course did come to pass. Idol is actually Idol the Third, and is the daughter of Idol the High Mutant Prophet, who was also an Omega level seer and who predicted the fall of Arakko, which also ended up being correct. I don't know if these prophets have ever gotten anything wrong, these mutant prophets, but I'm pretty sure they haven't. So basically, just if they say something, just know it'll probably happen. Number 7. Lotus Logos. Lotus Logos is another who sits on the Great Ring of Arakko. Like the Quiet Council of Krakoa, the Great Ring also has areas to its ruling body of government. There is the Table of Dawn, which has those members who specifically know about war and can advise in such times. Day, which is all about peace times and knowing how to advise in such times. Night, which is an unknown secretive body that serves unknown purposes, but probably like some really epic Black Ops stuff since this is Arakko, who isn't really afraid to go Black Ops as needed. And then there is Dusk, which is where Lotus Logos sits. Dusk is all about ruling over more neutral conceptual and cultural matters. Lotus Logos holds the seat of dreams at his table and is known for being an Omega level mutant and artist, whose powers pertain to metal creation. Number 6. Iska the Unbeaten. Iska has to be one of my favorites of the new Iraqi mutants that have been introduced to us. She is actually the sister-in-law of Apocalypse, as she is related to his wife, Genesis. Iska is a powerful mutant whose abilities allow her to, and in some cases force her to, always be on the winning side of a battle. For this reason, she ended up abandoning the mutants of Arakko and joining the forces of Amenth during the war between those two groups. However, in the end, the conflict between them was resolved, with the Amenth being defeated after Apocalypse helped to free them from the influence of the Golden Helm, which also had influenced his wife Genesis into becoming the leader of the Amenthi demons. When the mutants of Arakko made the move to Mars, Iska was among them. She also serves on the Great Ring of Arakko, which is like Krakoa's Earth-based Quiet Council. Number 5. Magneto. One of the mutants who has made the great move over to Mars is Magneto. Magneto is the master of magnetism, a former supervillain turned more anti-hero as years have gone on in the comics. Magneto himself was also responsible for helping to terraform Mars, transforming it into a place suited for all of the mutants who now reside there to live. Afterwards, Magneto ended up retiring from the Quiet Council following the events of Inferno and decided to move to Mars and join the other mutants there. I feel like both X-Men Red and the Red Planet itself are a great fit for Magnus, Eric, or Max to retire to. Retire. Take your pick when it comes to Magneto's names, by the way, although he seems to be settling with Max for the time being, as seen in X-Men Red issue number 1 anyways. That's how he introduces himself. He's like, nah, don't call me Magneto, just call me Max. And I feel like this will possibly be a very active retirement for Max in the end. Number 4. Latuka the Knower. Latuka the Knower is one of the Arakko mutants who sits on the Great Ring of Arakko. Latuka, like so many mutants of Arakko, has a really cool and specific mutant power. They have the ability to know the location of everything that has a location to know of. It's also possible that this knowledge extends beyond the universe and is actually multiversal as well. Without Latuka's help, Arakko would not have been able to move to Mars, as their precise knowledge of location was necessary to help teleporters move the entire sentient mutant island, which is also, of course, a body of land. A lot of things to move there, so gotta be really precise, don't want to mess it up. Number 3. Vulcan. Yep, Magneto is not the only one making moves. Vulcan also seems to be considering moving to the red planet that we've now come to know as Planet Arakko. He shows up in X-Men Red issue number 1 on the planet, where he walks into the Red Lagoon bar to pick a fight with Shi'ar's diplomat there. Vulcan is pissed that his throne was taken by Gladiator because Vulcan seemingly died, when in reality, He didn't die. He feels the further passing on of his crown from Gladiator to Xandra Xavier is therefore invalid, as he, the previous ruler, was still alive. Vulcan believes he belongs on planet Arakko as rightful ruler of the Shi'ar and Krakoan royalty as a Summers. His words, not mine. He's like, I'm royalty, I'm a Summers. I don't know if that makes you mutant royalty, bud. Is that what we're going with now? He gets into a pretty fantastic fight with Roberto da Costa, aka Sunspot, who owns the Red Lagoon, and John Proudstar, aka Thunderbird, who has recently also returned to life. Yay! I mean, Vulcan, I guess, was never dead, but, you know, we all thought he was dead. He looked like he was gonna be pretty dead, I gotta say. When he just came back and he was like, yeah, I never died, it was like, wow, I mean, alright. Sure, you're Vulcan, so I believe it. Number 2, Tarn the Uncaring. Tarn the Uncaring is a pretty important Iraqi mutant. Like so many others on the island, Tarn, who is also a member of the Great Ring of Arakko, moved with the rest to Mars after it was terraformed. Tarn is known for being a major antagonist, especially in the recent Sword series where he played adversary to Storm. But Tarn also shows up in Hellions, where he ends up as an enemy of the Hellions, or rather, they end up an enemy of his after being tricked by their leader, Mr. Sinister, into stealing genetic samples from Tarn and his Locust Vial, which he didn't like very much or appreciate. Tarn is an Omega level mutant who also possesses magical abilities. One of his prime powers is the ability to alter mutants' genetics at whim, which is pretty crazy, I gotta say. Those are some powers you do not want to mess with, someone that can just mess with your genes all willy-nilly. Number 1, Regent Aurora the Storm. If you haven't been around for a while, you might not know just how much hype Storm is getting in the comics, and hype rightfully deserved. One of the major shifts we've seen for her character is in becoming the Regent of Mars, aka Planet Arakko. This isn't just a title that was given to Storm either, she actually had to fight for it, and fight she did. She fought against Nameless, a member of the Great Ring of Arakko, and known as the Shapeshifter Queen in a trial by combat. The two fought against one another in the Arakko arena known as the Circle Perilous. Nameless took the form of Storm in her prime to fight against the real Aurora, but this failed when Storm froze her. Rather than simply surrender her title, Nameless chose to die in battle instead, while Storm proved that of all versions of herself, she was the superior. Storm became the ruling regent of Planet Arakko and took her rightful place on the Great Ring of Arakko, being the first and thus far I believe the only mutant to have ruled on both Krakoa's Quiet Council and Arakko's Great Ring. And at one point it seemed as though she might have been doing both at the same time, at least based on the order of my reading. I'm not sure if that was continuity thing or if that is actually what happened. Transitional times. Though of course I will admit my continuity could be slightly off there, so she may have just left the Quiet Council and then gone to the Great Ring. Storm can do it all. She's like, I could do this, don't worry. I'll rule both these things, help you guys, no probs. Number 10, Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel was once Carol Danvers and is now Kamala Khan. And of course for this list we're focusing on Kamala, who was a new addition to the Avengers team in 2015, after making her first unnamed appearance only 2 years earlier in 2013 in the comics. Kamala is a huge Carol Danvers fan, which is what inspired her to take up the mantle Miss Marvel after Carol dropped it, taking up the Captain Marvel mantle instead herself. Kamala as Miss Marvel has powers which allow her to alter her body's physiology, allowing her to stretch, change size and shape, and in theory, straight up shapeshift. Her powers come from Inhuman heritage, which was activated by her exposure to the Terrigen bomb. Kamala joined the team for a time during all new, all different Avengers, and remains a fan favorite hero at Marvel Comics. And to clarify before we move on to point 9, this is going to be a list of Avengers that have recently come onto the team as opposed to new Avengers, which is kind of its own thing. There's a lot of new Avengers, so I just want to clarify that. Number 9, Wasp. Not the same Wasp who years ago was actually the leader of the Avengers for a while. Nuh-uh, we are not talking about Janet Van Dyne here, we are talking about Nadia Van Dyne, who despite her seemingly misleading name is actually the daughter of Hank Pym and his first wife, Maria Travoia. After her mother Maria was kidnapped and later killed, Nadia ended up being raised in the Red Room, considered a valuable asset due to her natural aptitude for science and academia, believed to be somewhat in part due to the fact that she was Hank's naturally born daughter. daughter. Nadia would eventually escape the Red Room and attempt to locate her father in the US, only to find out that he had recently died during a fight against Ultron. Nadia felt compelled to meet her stepmother, Janet, desiring to become the new Wasp. The two ended up getting along well, and Janet even gave Nadia her blessing to take her last name, seeing her as family. Hence, Nadia became both Nadia Van Dyne and the new Wasp, also going on to join the Avengers team. Number 8. Spider-Man. Peter Parker as Spider-Man has of course teamed up with the Avengers before, but Miles Morales as Spider-Man is a newer addition, not just in terms of the Avengers team, but also still relatively new in terms of him existing in 616. Miles Morales is originally a Spider-Man who hails from the Ultimate Comics line originating in Earth 1610, the Ultimate Universe. He was given a new home on Earth 616 after his world had been destroyed as a result of showing kindness to and sharing food with Molecule Man during the Secret Wars event. True story. Thank goodness for pocket cheeseburgers. Miles has a power set very similar to Peter's in many ways, but also has a few unique abilities of his own. He can shock his opponents with venom blasts and can sneak up on them with his spider camouflage, which he can use to appear invisible. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about even more newest additions to the Avengers we've seen in recent years, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Number 7. Valkyrie. Valkyrie is Jane Foster, who was originally known as Thor when she joined the Avengers team the first time around. Jane ended up becoming the new Thor after Thor Odinson, the original Thor, was deemed unworthy. As the new Mighty Thor, editorially referred to at times as Lady Thor, Jane joined the Avengers team in the all-new, all-different Avengers series in 2015. Currently in the comics, Jane is no longer the Mighty Thor, but was welcomed into Asgardia by Odin, who gave her a new title and power set, making her a new Valkyrie. To clarify, I'm saying Asgardia because she was kind of like welcome to the whole world of Asgard, but she didn't go live on Asgard or anything specific like that. Currently, Valkyrie is the mantle that she uses. Being imbued with the spirit of Valkyrie Brunhilde gives Jane the strength and power set of an Asgardian warrior. In addition, there are specific powers that are also granted to Valkyries like herself. She can teleport, has death perception, and can see ghosts, in addition to being a super strong and capable fighter. Number 6. Starbrand. I kinda miss when Brandy was just like a little Starbrand baby, but of course this is comics and heroes can't stay babies forever. In fact, they can't even stay a baby for more than a year apparently, especially if they're joining the Avengers, which I kinda get. Technically, the young Starbrand, Baby Selby, later given the first name Brandy, was in the care of the Avengers, not really specifically on the team, kinda sorta like their ward. But despite being one of the youngest heroes to ever be affiliated with that team, this little Starbrand also would often help the team out on missions, being so insanely powerful. Starbrand possesses the Starbrand, which grants her a great amount of basically cosmic power. She is capable of interstellar flight and flight in general, energy manipulation and projection, creating energy blasts, and technically should also be super durable and have some level of healing factor. The Starbrand's power is believed to be potentially infinite when it comes to their power levels, making Starbrand one of the most powerful members on the team, in baby form, child form, or young adult form as she currently is as of the end of issue 52 of the current 2018 Avengers series. Number 5. Ghost Rider. While Starbrand might have the greatest potential for power, and we aren't sure entirely what she's capable of just yet, Robbie Reyes is a bit more experienced when it comes to his powers, and even when he was less experienced, he actually accidentally killed one of the previous Starbrands, Kevin Connor, in Marvel Legacy. So for those reasons, I thought we should give him a bit of a boost when it comes to his ranking on this list. Robbie Reyes first appeared in the comic scene in 2014 in all-new Ghost Rider issue number 1. He is an all-new Ghost Rider, just like the series claims. During a street race gone wrong, Robbie was killed and ended up possessed by the ghost who haunted the car that he was driving, becoming the new Ghost Rider. He joined up with the Avengers recently in the comics, and I think he makes a great addition to the team. I personally love Robbie Reyes, so yeah, I'm here for it. Number 4. Winter Hulk. While Jennifer Walters as She-Hulk may have joined the Avengers long ago, first joining up back in the 80s, she has gone through a lot of changes since then. One recent and major one, which also returned her to her smaller, smarter, more playful and sassy yet still very powerful form happened recently in Avengers comics. For a brief time, She-Hulk, then known as just Hulk, ended up becoming Winter Hulk. Winter Hulk happened as a result of Jen allowing herself to be kidnapped by the Winter Guard of Russia to try and figure out what they were up to. What devious things are they planning? In the end, they attempted to mind wipe and brainwash Hulk to turn her into one of their agents. And they kinda succeeded. Although the process was interrupted, for a brief time Jen acted as their agent, Winter Hulk. However, as Winter Hulk, Jen still managed to fight against her programming, and alert her fellow Avengers when sent to attack Namor and Atlantis. In the end, Winter Hulk was forced to absorb a ton of radiation to protect the citizens of Atlantis. She managed to discharge the gamma radiation she had absorbed safely, and as a result was returned to her original form, ultimately deciding to retire from the Avengers team after these events and return to practicing law. And now we have a new She-Hulk series that I have heard nothing but good things about. I really need to get reading my first issue. Number 3. Phoenix. While Phoenix is definitely one of the most powerful superheroes to be on the Avengers team, her history with them is a bit more lengthy than you might initially think, which is why I ranked her a little bit lower on this list than I normally would. Phoenix herself was back on the original Avengers team, the prehistoric Avengers, or the Avengers of 1 million BC. This avatar for Phoenix was known as Firehair. However, Firehair only made her first appearance even in 2017 in the comics, so she's also kinda new in a way, even though she's super old. Does that make sense? Maya Lopez, aka Echo, is the current host of the Phoenix Force and the current Phoenix, who also finds herself on the Avengers team. Her being Phoenix is new, but her being on the Avengers team is not new. She rejoined the team in 2021 as Phoenix, which is quite new, like I said, but she actually was a member of the Avengers way back in 2005, when she was using the mantle of Ronin. Still, Maya being Phoenix and being part of the Avengers altogether is quite fresh right now, despite both the Phoenix Force's history with the prehistoric team and Maya's own history with the present day team. And of course, Phoenix is one of the most powerful entities in the entire Marvel universe. So despite her being kind of a new old combo thing, we have to show respect to the blazingly brilliant and powerful Maya Lopez, aka Echo, aka Phoenix, on this list. Number 2. Cable. Nathan Summers ended up joining the Avengers team at a time when Captain America was seeking to present a show of unity. Hence, Cable ended up being on the Avengers Unity division, which was meant to bring together Avengers and X-Men after events of Avengers vs. X-Men had created tension between the two superhero groups of Earth. Series-wise, the team was known as the Uncanny Avengers, with Cable joining up as early as issue number 4. Cable is an extremely powerful telepath and telekinetic due to him being the offspring of X-Men member Cyclops and his wife at the time, Mr. Sinister created clone of Jean Grey, Madelyne Pryor. Despite Maddie being his birth mother, Jean has also been like a mother to Nate after she was implanted with the memories of basically raising him, making her kind of like his telepathically retcon mom, with Maddie becoming more like a surrogate mother in terms of her relationship with Nate, formerly known to her as Baby Christopher. Oh, baby Christopher. Number 1. Avenger Prime. Avenger Prime is kinda like all of the Avengers merged together. At least, that's what the original version of this character was like. They made their first appearance in the 2013 Mighty Avengers series, but another character with that name also recently reappeared in the 2021 Free Comic Book Day Avengers and Hulk comic. They showed up in the Avengers portion of that double feature story comic. Here, Avengers Prime is the leader of the Deathlock Avengers forces, who basically stands guard at the God Quarry, seeking to watch, protect, and warn against major multiversal threats and potential chronal collapses. Presumably, this is some version of Avenger Prime that decided to stay omnipotent and bonded together. At least that's what I'm assuming. Some people are assuming different things. When we saw Avenger Prime last, or an alternate version of them if you will, they were created using a ritual which allowed the team of Mighty Avengers to bond together. Technically, Avenger Prime stands to be the most powerful of the Avengers, as they should be made up of one or more teams or rosters potentially combined together. Now, of course, some people believe that Avenger Prime is actually some sort of alternate version or some future version of Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, but we don't really know for sure yet. Whoever they are though, they definitely seem to have a lot of time, a lot of power, and a lot of resources on their hands, especially for being a shadowy figure.
Now, starting off at number 10, we have Forget Me Not. I wanted to start this list off really small, with a character y'all may not know. Mainly because almost no one knows him because that's his power. Appearing in 2014, Forget-Me-Not had actually been a member of the X-Men for several years before this, but thanks to his abilities, no one can remember him. Forget-Me-Not's abilities make it so that he is imperceptible in all forms, basically. The power is so good that even Charles Xavier himself had to place a psychic reminder on himself so that he would remember Forget-Me-Not's existence. Clearly, that means some of the most powerful telepaths have difficulty discovering him, let alone remembering him. His power is to be forgotten, but the unique ways this power could be used, and the uniqueness of this power in general, will keep him in my mind. Number 9, we got Eye-Boy. Why is a guy named Eye-Boy on a list of strongest members of the X-Men? I see you, like many of the other mutants, are very judgmental. Trevor Hawkins' body is covered in eyes, 57 to be exact, which give him an array of powers that honestly, you kinda may expect. Microscopic, telescopic, X-ray, night, infrared, and thermal vision are all a part of his power list. But he can also detect chemicals, is an excellent marksman, and is skilled in nonverbal communication. He can almost read other people's minds by reading their behaviors and body language. He is an incredible tracker. He can predict attacks and can read people's histories just by looking at them. He can pinpoint weak spots in machines and people, is able to see electronic wavelengths and microwaves, is able to see past illusions and disguises as well as magic waves. He makes an amazing detective, in short. On top of all that, he can even pass what he sees onto others, but he has to be physically close enough for it to work. But to top it all off, the craziest and most unexpected power he possesses recently is solar blasts. We don't know how just yet, but Trevor can emit intense bursts of bright yellow energy and focused beams of extrastellar force that cause sunburns and radiation poisoning. Coming in at number 8, it's Gwenpool. I think Gwenpool has one of the strangest powers. That would be the power of medium interaction, which is because she comes from a reality very much like ours, as in superheroes are fictional people in comic books. So, when Gwen was transported to a pocket universe that recreated her home reality, Gwen's perception of the fictional world allowed her to gain the ability to recognize and manipulate the artistic medium that she was now in. She can see and physically interact with lettering and caption boxes, and touch and even break through panel gutters, allowing her to transport objects short distances through space and time by moving them across panels, and she interacts with different instances of herself from multiple panels on the same page. Now, I don't know if you've realized this, but this kind of means Gwendolyn Poole can kind of warp reality in a way. She kind of becomes one of the most crazily powerful characters in comics, at least potentially. She first showed up in Howard the Duck Volume 6 number 1 in November of 2015, and she has actually teamed up with many different characters and teams, including being a member of the X-Men on and off again. Number 7, Laura Kinney. I know, she isn't really new as a character, but Laura Kinney, or X-23, has become the all-new Wolverine, and that is relatively new. She officially joined the X-Men as this Wolverine at the Hellfire Gala in 2021. There are a few characters with powers similar to Wolverine, and there are even a few who are clones of Laura herself. But of all these characters, Laura is certainly the best and definitely the most fan-loved. Her powers are very similar to Logan's, with her primary mutant power being an accelerated healing factor. And obviously, she also has retractable bone claws, only she has 2 in her forearms and 1 in her foot. Well, each foot. She was obviously a clone and grew up being made to be a weapon, so of course she has an extremely haunted past. But with Logan as a father figure in her life, she grew up under him, and she even did the same for Gabrielle Kinney, another clone who Laura considers to be her younger sister. She's already done so much, but I just kinda can't wait to see what else she does as Wolverine. Number 6! It's Synch. Everett Thomas isn't a new character by any means, being first introduced in 1994, but while he was a part of Generation X, he didn't officially land on the team until this newest iteration of X-Men. He was also one of the first mutants resurrected by the Five on Krakoa, due to the fact that his powers could enable him to act as a substitute for any of the Five who might need to tag out. With that said, what are his powers? Sinch's powers are known as synchronistic power replication. Synch basically produces this really cool funkadelic looking aura that allows him to synchronize with other supers in his vicinity, letting him use their powers unless they leave the vicinity. But what's really interesting is that he doesn't need that person to be completely there. So if you had like a tissue sample from a superpowered person, he could sync with that and it would be enough. Since his resurrection, his powers have been amped up, giving him a limited memory bank of powers he's synced with. He became an official base member of the new X-Men team announced at the Hellfire Gala alongside Laura Kinney in X-Men Volume 5 number 21 in 2022. Number 5. Zorn. Question: what would you do if you and your twin brother developed the mutant ability of having your head become a star? Answer: I honestly don't know how you would still be alive to decide what to do in the first place. Shen Zorn and his twin brother Quan Yin Zorn both developed mutant powers that, in essence, were tiny stars that burned away and replaced their actual heads. They were both isolated, and they both wear super cool looking iron helmets with power dampeners to contain their power from doing too much damage. Shen is called Zorn with a Z, and his head is actually technically a black hole. And to keep things not confusing, Quan Yin is also named Zorn, but with an X. Okay, so what the heck can they do with their powers? Well, both of these characters can produce gravitational electromagnetism, which could actually allow them to heal others and use telepathy, and also, really weirdly, somehow allowed them to sense when people died and speak using shaking gravitational particles. Zorn, the one with a Z, could suck people into his black hole and even turn his black hole back into a sun. They could also both obviously do a lot of damage, using the power of a star to burn, blind, and incinerate people. They both became members of the X-Men at different times. X-Zorn was the first in 2002, but he wasn't always good. And his brother, Z-Zorn, joined more than a few years later. Number 4, it's Dupe. First appearing in X-Force number 116 in 2001, Dupe's origin story is kind of hard to explain, because we don't know for a fact what it is. Captain America tells us he was a US Cold War weapons project, and he apparently had some kind of role in the fall of communism. He was originally a member of X-Force until eventually becoming a member of X-Static. For such an unthreatening character, Dupe is surprisingly strong. He has been described as being an extra-dimensional being with a genius-level intellect, bordering on possible omniscience. And he has a large array of psionic powers, one of which includes controlling Russians. He can change his size and shape at will, allowing him to heal wounds and reassemble parts of his body if they have been removed or cut off. He has an incredible level of super strength and durability as well, with an unknown limit, being able to match and overcome Thor in a fight when he was in a weakened state, taking hits from Mjolnir while he did so. He seems to be able to come back from the afterlife, and he also has a pocket dimension inside himself that he can store things in and summon creatures from. He can also completely break the fourth wall and go across the comic panels. Dupe has defeated the devil all by himself. He is overpowered, and I don't know how anyone loses with him on their team. Coming in at number 3, it's Tempest. Eva Bell first was seen in All New X-Men number 1 in 2012, when we also saw her mutant powers manifest. She was out with friends and a boy when her brother showed up and began to get into a fight with that boy. The stress and duress of the situation caused her powers to pop off, and she completely froze everyone within a city block of her in time for 20 hours, until the X-Men showed up, helped her, and then took her in. She's been referred to as near Omega level, with her ability of chronokinesis within a time bubble, meaning she can freeze and slow down time and is one of the best at it in the world. She can also speed up time in the bubble by decades if she chooses to, which is why she's a member of the Five, to age up whoever is being resurrected. And she can even time travel. Although she has shown to lose control over this power from time to time, there is no doubt she is and can become more incredibly powerful. Number 2, Elixir. Joshua Foley, otherwise known as Elixir, is a mutant with Omega level healing abilities. He's incredibly powerful, and while originally was just considered a general threat, he can actually use his powers offensively as well, completely ending lives if he wants to. Using his mutant ability of biokinesis, Elixir is capable of controlling the biological structure of his own and other people's bodies down to the genetic level. Now this started off small, but has grown to allow him to simultaneously heal heal dozens of people, resurrect himself and others, and even the ability to control, manipulate, and absorb the life forces of other living creatures. Offensively, he can use his death touch to harm others, to cause different types of illness, massive swellings, and organ failure. He's even completely destroyed the body of enemies before. He is one of the core members of the Five, as I'm sure no one is surprised about, and he has been a member of the X-Men ever since he was one of the only surviving mutants who retained his powers at the Xavier Institute after M-Day, and he was trained to become one in 2006's New Mutants. Number 1! Hope Summers. Hope Summers was the first mutant born after the events of M-Day, the mutant decimation, or the day that Scarlet Witch cast No More Mutants. She was then taken into the far future and raised by Cable, being carried around in the coolest baby Bjorn you'll ever see. Not too long after, she returned to the present and her mutant powers finally activated. Her power is basically that of Omega level power manipulation. She can manipulate the powers of other mutants nearby to her, even mimicking their powers, but at full capacity and with complete control over those powers. And she can even take on multiple powers at once, but it is pretty tiring for her to do that. A large part of her role in the Krakoan society is as the leader of the Five, who use their abilities to resurrect the mutants of Krakoa. Her role on the Five specifically is both to boost their powers to their full potential and help them work in synergy with each other perfectly. She also helped terraform Mars alongside Vulcan and Proteus, giving them enough power to actually do it. She is such a cool character, and she first appeared back in X-Men Volume 2 number 205 in 2008, but was a child for much of that until she came of age and joined X-Force and the X-Men.
Number 10. Dazzler. Starting off our list today, we have Allison Blair, a mutant who dreamed of becoming a singer one day, but unfortunately, her dad wasn't too on board with that. She manifested her powers one day while performing at a junior high dance, blinding everyone in sight minus herself. If you're not familiar with this character, then you're probably a little confused, so let me explain. Allison possesses some pretty cool abilities known as sound conversion and light projection. Sound conversion allows her to absorb these sounds around her and either release them back out in a big energy blast, or use them for a makeshift echolocation that has proved to be pretty effective if I do say so myself. And then light projection allows her to control the energy levels of the outer electron shells of her body in such a way that causes the release of photons. And by doing this, she can blind her opponents, shoot lasers, photon blasts, create holograms, and so much more. Now aside from these two powers, she also seems to be basically immortal because she has this mysterious resurrection factor that prevents her from dying by any normal means. Check out her story for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1980's X-Men number 130. Number 9. Starbrand. The Starbrand may be an object, but were you aware that there is also a hero that goes by that name as well? On Earth 148,611, Ken Connell received the Starbrand from a mysterious old man he met in the woods. With the Starbrand equipped, he gained pretty much limitless powers, including super strength, flight, near invulnerability, and a couple more. Ken strived to use his powers for good, but often was thwarted by his own shortcomings and the harsh realities of the real world, but that didn't stop him, and eventually he decided to become a much more traditional superhero by donning the spandex suit and mask. Despite his intelligence, Ken was never really able to harness the full power of the Starbrand because he lacked the imagination and curiosity needed. However, that didn't stop him from causing some serious damage. Literally. After learning the supposed origins of the Starbrand, he killed hundreds of people at a comic book convention and unintentionally destroyed all of Pittsburgh, leading him to believe that he might be better off without his powers, and I think we all kind of agree. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1986's Starbrand, number 1. Number 8. Namor. The first Marvel character to have a history that spawns over 70 years of publication, Namor Mackenzie, aka the Submariner, is certainly a strong and resourceful character in the Marvel Universe. Thanks to his unique genetic makeup being a human/Atlantean/mutant hybrid, he possesses a pretty crazy arsenal of powers, including super strength, speed, stamina, and durability, flight, healing, and hydrokinesis. Namor is stronger and tougher than most any human or Atlantean. He can go toe-to-toe with some of the strongest beings on Earth and come out unscathed, especially when underwater or covered in water, which increases his strength by extreme degrees. Namor has telepathic abilities from his Atlantean heritage that allows him to communicate and command not only sea life, but also fellow Atlantean soldiers, if need be. Namor also has a much longer lifespan than a human and shows very little signs of aging despite being born many decades ago. We've seen Namor as a member of the X-Men Red Team, the Defenders of the Deep, the Invaders, the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and that's not even half of the team that he's been on. Like I said, he's been around for a very long time. Now, if you're not familiar with this character, then you are truly missing out, so check him out in his first appearance in 1939's Motion Picture Funnies Weekly, number 1. Number 7. Spectrum. Monica Rambeau gained her powers one day while working for the New Orleans Harbor Police when she was exposed to and bombarded by extra-dimensional energy. Now classified as an alpha level threat, she uses her newfound energy form to create energy blast, alter her appearance, fly, and just a whole lot more. Given the name Captain Marvel by the media, she became friends with many superpowered folks early on and actually served as an Avenger for a period of time. Becoming its leader at one point, however, she was forced to step down from the group after many injuries. Out of respect for Genus Vell, the son of the original Captain Marvel, she changed her name to Photon so that he could take up the mantle and carry on his father's legacy. Fast forward a little bit past her time with the Mighty Avengers, we see Monica, now known as Spectrum, join the newly formed Ultimates. However, after the second superhuman civil war, the team was disbanded by the government because of the way they dealt with conflict. They did later reassemble to investigate Eternity at the request of Galactus, and eventually the team was combined into Alpha Flight and they were working to keep people safe to this day. If you want to know more about Monica's origin story, check her out in her first appearance in 1982's Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16. Number 6. Legion. David Haller, son of Charles Xavier, who Charles actually didn't know about until he founded the New Mutants. Born a mutant, David developed his powers after his home was invaded and his stepfather was killed right in front of him. He woke the latent psionic powers within himself and incinerated the brains of the assassins. However, there was a major drawback to this power. David formed a telepathic bond with his victims, experiencing their emotions and thoughts as they died, and this traumatized him and still seems to affect him to this day. Interestingly enough, David is capable of creating new mutations and powers all the time, and in order to cope with that immense power, he creates new personalities / personas to govern them. Some of the most well known being personality number 5, the Legion, personality 3, Jack Wayne, personality 4, Cindy, and of course personality 2, Jamel Karami, who attempted to restructure David's psyche into his own image. Now you're probably thinking he's a little low on this list considering he has at least 200 plus powers at his disposal, and you would be absolutely right. But he is slightly below average in just about everything else, and also the fact that his dissociative personality disorder hindered him greatly. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1985's New Mutants number 26, and let me know if you agree with the placement on this list today in the comments below. Number 5. Clayton Cortez was a Marine who was sold off to Dr. Alba, the head of the Weapon X Batch 8 division, focused on creating some Hulk Wolverine hybrids. Alba left more of Cortez's brain in with the intention to better train him and discipline him, and from there Weapon H was born. As a newly created mutant / gamma mutate cyborg, he has the DNA of Wolverine, the Hulk, and a multitude of other superpowered beings grafted to him. Not to mention his bones have been bonded with adamantium. He possesses the ability to change back and forth between his human and Hulk form, and he has retractable bone claws, projectile claws, and even extendable bone claws as well. Basically, Cortez is an advanced Wolverine with the powers of the Hulk. We've seen him easily take down the Hulk, the Wendigo, and a few more of our other favorite heroes and villains. According to Dr. Alba herself, it is said that Weapon H could easily kill every living being on Earth, and seriously, I believe her. Check him out for yourself, starting with 2017's Totally Awesome Hulk, number 21. Number 4. Sync. Everett Thomas was a mutant from Missouri possessing an ability known as synchronicity. This ability allows him to quote-unquote be in sync with the other superhumans in his immediate vicinity, and thanks to this he is able to gain and use whatever powers they have. This is all done through the aura that he emits, as it is what absorbs the energy around him. After the Phalanx crisis, Everett and the other youths were all relocated to the Massachusetts Academy, where they were trained to use their powers, received a formal education, and acted as the new generation of X-Men known as Generation X. He was briefly turned into a parasitic mutant by the team's arch nemesis Emplit, who wanted to destroy Sync's happy family life. Under Emplit's influence, Sync menaced his family and friends until M, who he had difficulty syncing with, was able to defeat him. Skip ahead a bit and we see Sync find a bomb, and there were human students nearby. Everett synced with the nearest mutant, Monet. However, Monet was too far away, so he only received a portion of her powers, which happened to be her super strength. Using all of his might, he threw the human kids out the window, saving them from the explosion, but sadly, he was not able to save himself, dying to save his human peers. He does come back though, so don't worry. Check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1994's X-Men Volume 2, number 36. Number 3. Rogue. Easily one of the most well-known X-Men out there, Rogue is a mutant that was born with an incredible ability, albeit a harmful and involuntary one. She has the ability to absorb the powers, energy, memories, knowledge, talents, personality, and physical abilities of another human being, be them mutant or not, through physical skin-to-skin contact. This transfer is usually temporary, lasting for a period of time relative to how long contact was maintained, but the transfer may become permanent in certain cases, like how it seems she still has the powers of Wonder Man, or how she permanently absorbed Ms. Marvel and Sunfire's powers. You probably already know, but this power was pretty tough to control at first, and that deterred her away from any sort of romantic and physical touch. but eventually she learned to fully control her powers and married Gambit. Funnily enough, despite being known as a member of the X-Men, she was initially raised as a villain by Mystique and the Brotherhood of Evil, but she eventually reformed and turned to the X-Men. Throughout her publication, she has taken on the likes of the Dazzler, Miss Marvel, Captain America, Thor, Nimrod, and Amplet, and the fact that she's still around to tell the tale just speaks volumes about her power. Check her out, starting with her first appearance in 1981's Avengers Annual, number 10. Number 2, Jack of Hearts. Real name Jonathan Hart, aka Jack Hart. The Jack of Hearts is the son of the scientist Philip Hart and an alien from the Contraxian race. However, he was unaware that his mother was an alien for most of his life. When Hart was a teenager, his father was murdered right in front of him, and in an attempt to hide from the killers, he was covered in a powerful chemical known as the Zero Fluid, and this mutated his body and gave him the powers he has today. From that point on, he was able to create powerful beams of energy from his body, and by further harnessing and honing his skills, he is able to fly. Not to mention, he also has super strength, stamina, and durability, and an accelerated healing factor. In an attempt to control his powers, Jack of Hearts built a containment suit that resembled the Jack of Hearts playing card. The lack of control became a very recurring theme with Jack of Hearts, including a stint in the Avengers where he had to spend 14 hours a day in a containment room to prevent self-destruction. When his powers became uncontrollable, he chose to finally leave Earth, exploding in space without harming any innocent bystanders. He does eventually return though in Avengers Disassembled and in the Marvel Zombie miniseries, so don't worry too much. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1976's Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, number 22. And number 1, Blue Marvel. Adam Brashear, aka Blue Marvel, was known as a child prodigy from a very early age, and has PhDs in electrical engineering and theoretical physics. After serving his time in the Korean War, Adam joined and led a project attempting to harness antimatter by creating a negative reactor. But there was an unexpected explosion, and both he and Connor Sims were exposed to radiation. Sims wasn't too lucky and his whole body disassembled, but Adam was able to become a stable antimatter reactor and develop some pretty sweet powers. As Blue Marvel, he possesses super strength, can manipulate antimatter into energy blast, can fly, is pretty much invulnerable, and is pretty much immortal as well, as he ages much slower than normal humans. As a part of the Mighty Avengers, both the 1970s version and the one led by Luke Cage, and the Ultimates, we have seen Blue Marvel go up against the likes of the Deathwalkers, King Hyperion, and one time he even flew directly through Shumagorath's head. He has also been seen to withstand the blast of a hydrogen and nuclear bomb, and able to withstand blows from Captain Marvel, so yeah, he deserves the top spot today. Check him out for yourself, starting with 2009's Adam, Legend of the Blue Marvel, number 1.
And at 10, Punisher. Lieutenant Francis, or Frank Castle, also known as the Punisher, is a former Italian-American U.S. Marine who served in multiple tours of duty, including the Synagogue War. This bravery in combat earned him the Bronze Star, Silver Star, and 4 Purple Hearts. Tragedy struck though when his wife Maria and children Lisa and Frank Jr. were killed after witnessing a mafia hit. Consumed by grief and driven by vengeance, Frank transformed into the Punisher, sporting a distinctive head skull on his chest, and he made it his life's mission to eradicate organized crime in all of its forms. Armed with cutting-edge weaponry, he wages a relentless war against criminals as just his own self, like a lone wolf, drawing upon his combat skills, expertise in guerrilla and urban warfare, and sharp destructive tactics. The Punisher adopts very hostile means of taking out the mafia and hunts down those who he deems responsible for eliminating his family. But yeah, dude's a dark hero unless he's having food fights with Archie Andrews, which actually happened. And at 9, Black Widow. Natasha Romanov's early life is the subject of varying accounts. One version tells of a fire in Stalingrad in 1928 that consumed the building where infant Natasha and her mother resided. In a desperate act, Natasha's mother threw her out the window to safety, where she was caught by a Russian soldier named Ivan Petrovich. Ivan became her steadfast guardian and foster father throughout her life. Another account places the fire during the Battle of Stalingrad in autumn of 1942. While under Ivan's protection, Natasha was abducted by Baron von Strucker and taken to the Hand, an organization of assassins in Madripoor. However, it was revealed that Natasha had been working undercover, following orders from an undisclosed source. Her abduction served as a ruse to infiltrate the Hand and assassinate their leader, the Onin. Logan, also known as Wolverine, intervened and killed the Onin instead, simultaneously freeing Captain America, but yeah, which is weird because then Natasha would then work with Captain America, despite being, yeah, it's a whole thing. The timelines are weird when you have super soldier and like Wolverine powers and you don't really age. And at 8, Black Cat. Felicia Hardy's father, Walter Hardy, was a renowned cat burglar who instilled in his daughter's mindset a sense of never settling for mediocrity. He encouraged her to pursue her passions wholeheartedly, urging her to aim for being a basketball player rather than just a cheerleader if it was her true passion. attention. During her freshman year in college, Felicia attended a party that turned into a harrowing experience where she was almost attacked by a drunken fellow student in a bathroom. Fortunately, another student named Ryan intervened, saving her from the assault, and from that, Felicia and Ryan formed a close bond, spending a lot of time together. However, the friendship took a dark turn when Ryan insisted that it was time to take their relationship to a different level, disregarding Felicia's objections. Refusing to be a victim again, Felicia rejected the idea and made a decision to seek revenge against her assailant, even if it meant facing dire consequences. She dedicated herself to intense training in various combat techniques and acrobatics, setting aside her studies, and then after months of preparation, she embarked on a path of vengeance driven by her determination to bring justice to her attacker. And while she is sometimes depicted as a villain, she does often help Spider-Man when it's for the greater good. But if there's any money to be made in it, Felicia will typically want to make the money. But I mean, I guess I can understand that. You love a girl with spunk. And it's 7 Elektra. Elektra spent years working as a bounty hunter and hired assassin. During a contract in New York City, she discovered that the blind adventurer of Daredevil was actually Matt Murdock. They then joined forces to combat Bullseye, who was suffering from a deteriorating mental state caused by a tumor. While Daredevil did disapprove of Elektra's profession, their connection remained strong, and after escaping from Pleasant Hill, Elektra sought redemption for the lives that she had taken by applying to rejoin S.H.I.E.L.D. She aimed to cleanse her conscience and make amends, and her initial assignment involved taking charge of Phil Coulson's former team. Yes, that Phil Coulson. As a part of her duties, she was tasked with apprehending Coulson for his interference with Captain Marvel's plans regarding the Inhuman profiler Ulysses Kaine and his predictive justice. Elektra's involvement also aided S.H.I.E.L.D. director Maria Hill, yes, Robin Scherbatsky, in uncovering a mole within Coulson's team, who was eventually revealed to be Leo Fitz. And at 6, Hawkeye. Clint Barton, also known as Hawkeye, is a highly skilled marksman and archer from America, where he started his journey initially as a circus performer and minor supervillain, but eventually became a valued member of the Avengers. Despite occasional conflicts with the team, Clint always returned to fight alongside his fellow Avengers against any threat, cause, you know, yeah. Dude kinda has like a Robin-esque origin story too. Being raised in a circus and trained by criminals, Clint still overcame a troubled youth to become one of Earth's greatest heroes. He is widely recognized for his exceptional mastery of a bow and arrow, displaying extreme precision and never really seeming to miss unless he means to. Throughout his career, he formed a strong friendship with Black Widow, aka Natasha Romanoff, and was married to fellow superhero Mockingbird, with whom he co-founded the West Coast Avengers. But I guess they don't film in Vancouver. Haha, it's a joke. Halfway through into number 5, Moon Knight. Mark Spector, operating as the vigilante Moon Knight, had a remarkable journey. Once a mercenary left for dead in the desert, he was granted a second chance when he was resurrected by the moon god Khonshu. Becoming Khonshu's champion and high priest, Moon Knight took on the role of a nocturnal avenger, safeguarding those who traversed in the shadows. However, Mark's life is not without complexity. He grapples with dissociative identity disorder, with different personalities such as the wealthy Stephen Grant and the taxi driver Jake Lockley. During his early days, Moon Knight fought crime with the assistance of a network of allies, including his loyal friend Frenchie Dutchamp, the resourceful Bertrand Crawley, and Port of Diner owner Gina Landers. While Mark mostly operates as a lone crusader, he has been associated with various superhero teams throughout his career. He served as a member of the West Coast Avengers, the Secret Avengers, and the Heroes for Hire. But yeah, Moon Knight is kind of a dope thing that was actually pretty niche until the series came out anyway. And at 4, Deadpool. Yeah. Okay, you knew this was gonna happen. Wade's recollections of his childhood are filled with conflicting memories. At times, he remembers his father abandoning his pregnant mother, leading to her directing anger towards him until Wade grew up and started hurting her instead. Or on the other hand, he's also recalled his mother passing away when he was 5, leaving him in the care of his father, who was a military officer. Nonetheless, Wade's account of his father being an absent figure who told bad jokes and left him with his mother when he was young kinda contradicted earlier memories, but yeah, it's Deadpool. You can't really believe anything he says, but you also kind of have to believe everything he says, otherwise you have nothing. It's kind of like FNAF in that way. But his mother, in that version, sought solace in humor, alcohol, and home shopping networks. Kind of like every aunt on TV ever. Wade believed that running away from home would spare his mother from spending what little money they had on him, but in a surprising twist, it was eventually revealed that Wade's parents were still together and living in Canada. They had preserved his room just as he had left it, but upon returning as an adult, Wade failed to recognize the house, his parents, or his own room. So yeah, that's complicated. That sounds like a Disney Channel original movie. I'm not even kidding. I feel like this is actually a Disney Channel movie twat. In at 3, Captain America. Steve Rogers, also known as Captain America, the first Avenger, faced numerous health issues that led to his rejection by the US Army during World War II. However, he seized the opportunity to volunteer for Project Rebirth, a program that administered the Super Soldier Serum developed by Dr. Abraham Erskine. This transformative serum greatly enhanced his frail physique, something that I could use, elevating him to the peak of human physicality. Known as the Sentinel of Liberty, Captain America fought alongside his closest ally Bucky Barnes and the Invaders, aiding the Allies in achieving victory in the war. However, his fate took a turn when he was lost at sea and remained frozen in suspended animation for several decades. I don't know how that could happen in an ocean, but okay, that's fine. Suspension of belief, it's comics. Eventually, he thawed out in the modern era and then continued his valiant struggle alongside a new team of allies, the Avengers. Captain America's unwavering loyalty lies not with politicians or governments, but with the timeless principles of freedom, equality, and justice that embody the American dream, which is kind of contradictive because that means that he would be loyal to the American government because it's the American dream, but oh well, I digress. But yeah, he has superpowers and he's a street hero apparently, so there you go, blame the wiki not. Penultimately, in at number 2, Spider-Man. Yep, Spider-Man's on this list too. Spider-Man, often known as a lone vigilante, has become an integral part of the superhero community and has forged strong alliances with various teams like the Fantastic Four and Avengers. Along his journey, he's faced formidable adversaries including Doc Ock, Electro, Kraven the Hunter, Mysterio, Venom, Green Goblin, who's obviously his arch nemesis who actually resulted in the death of Gwen Stacy. But in his civilian life, Peter's just kind of a dude. He's not really supposed to be that handsome, he's not cool, he's not fun, but he does actually have a support network that includes Mary Jane Watson, Harry Osborn, Flash Thompson, and at times J. Jonah Jameson, despite him literally trashing Spider-Man at all times, but again, he doesn't know, so it's a toss-up. But following the ups and downs of his startup company Parker Industries, Peter had to balance his Spider-Man duties with returning to college, all while becoming the target of a malevolent entity known as Kindred, which tormented him relentlessly. But again, somehow, the dude has to pull his punches, otherwise he'll just kill someone by flicking them, and he's considered a street hero because he fights thugs, I guess. Dude's been to space. Dude has had the power cosmic. How is he a street level villain or superhero? Whatever. It doesn't matter. How is he street level anything? Whatever. Moving on. And finally, in at number 1, Daredevil. Matt Murdock, blinded as a child but gifted with heightened senses, fights for the underprivileged in New York's Hell's Kitchen as a zealous lawyer during the day and as the agile and skilled martial artist Daredevil at night. Raised by his father, an aging boxer, Matt was encouraged to pursue education and intellectual pursuits rather than relying on physical strength. However, after witnessing his father's death at the hands of gangsters who demanded that he throw a fight, Matt swears to fight injustice both in the courtroom and out of it. Initially portrayed as a swashbuckling, carefree adventurer, Daredevil was later reimagined by Frank Miller in the 1980s as a tormented hero who suffers a series of tragedies. Miller introduced the character of Elektra, Matt's first and greatest love, who ultimately became an assassin and was killed by Daredevil's enemy Bullseye. But despite his pain and suffering, Matt continues to fight for justice, which is a good thing. But also, I realized this recently, Daredevil and Matt Murdock being blind and Superman's glasses are the same disguise. There you go. I've ruined your day. And if you want to know more about things that are probably going to ruin your day, be sure you click on the video that's popping up on screen. What a good pitch!
Number 10, Agent 13. While Sharon Carter might just be your average run-of-the-mill human on paper, in reality she is anything but your run-of-the-mill human when it comes to her capabilities. When the Secret Avengers team was brought together following the disbanding of Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers and Hammer, Captain America decided not to resurrect S.H.I.E.L.D., but instead create his own sub-Avengers teams to help keep the world safe. One of these teams was the Secret Avengers, and Sharon Carter was entrusted to be his kind of co-captain for it. Sharon Carter is Agent 13. Sharon was inspired to become an agent by tales that her Aunt Peggy Carter told her of her own heroics, as well as Captain America's. She joined S.H.I.E.L.D. and is considered to be among one of their best agents, being an expert in hand-to-hand combat as well as firearms. More importantly, Sharon is also a great tactician, strategist, and leader. Number 9, Goliath. Despite the fact that he died on the team, Goliath was still a powerful member. Goliath is Bill Foster, who used to work with Dr. Hank Pym as his assistant. Being a brilliant scientist himself, Foster was able to duplicate the formula for Pym particles. Exposing himself to Pym particles, he was given the ability to alter his size, turning himself into a giant. Well, at will. He could turn himself into a giant and then shrink back down. Hence the name Goliath. Safely, Foster could grow to 25 feet in height. His increase in size also gave him a great increase in strength and somewhat in durability due to his change in mass. The formula also allows his body to change so that it can actually support the weight of his new and larger form while he is transformed. However, Goliath was vulnerable if he changed sizes multiple times in a shorter period, as it left him weakened somewhat and exhausted temporarily. It's hard on the body, basically. He died during his time serving on the Secret Avengers during the first Civil War, which was actually the first Secret Avengers team, but not the first volume of Secret Avengers, to be clear. To some, his death only strengthened their conviction for the cause, and to others, it acted as a warning to basically leave the team. And gave them a signal that actually what they were doing maybe it wasn't a good idea. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn more about other sub-Avengers teams or more about the Secret Avengers, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. There's still lots of powerful members that I haven't talked about yet, so we could probably do a part 2 for this one. Number 8. Ant-Man. Ant-Man for the purpose of this list is actually Eric O'Grady, not Hank Pym or Scott Lang. During the Secret Avengers run that Ant-Man was a part of, the mantle was being held by Eric. If you thought Scott's past and thieving actions were questionable, Eric basically puts him to shame. Eric is probably the baddest of the Ant-Men in terms of his morals, although I think all Ant-Men have made some morally questionable choices in their life. Still, O'Grady really takes the cake overall. Eric O'Grady is more commonly known as the Irredeemable Ant-Man, which was the name of his Ant-Man series, which really gives you an idea of what type of character he is. However, Eric had decided to turn over a new leaf and really try to make a difference in the world and become a hero, which was what motivated him to accept a position on the Secret Avengers team. Although to be clear, up to this point he was still a hero, he just was kind of like a very morally corrupt hero. He possesses the Ant-Man suit, which gives him his powers, allowing him to change size, shrinking down, and later growing in size as well. He can also communicate with and command insects. Can also, I think, do some cool energy blasty stuff. So he's pretty powerful. But still, it's Eric O'Grady. It's not like Hank Ant-Man. I think those are two different levels. Number 7. Beast. Beast is Hank McCoy, one of the original members of the X-Men and also one of the brainiest members of the Secret Avengers. He ends up being recruited for his brilliant mind, but there is a lot that Beast brings to the table when it comes to his skill and his power set. In the comics, it's also been established that he is impossibly agile and dexterous. He also possesses superhuman strength, endurance, and durability. He has a healing factor which allows him to recover more quickly than most from injuries, and also slows his aging. His senses are heightened, and he has strong telepathic defenses, which can protect him against even some of the strongest psionics in the world of Marvel. He also has a few unique powers, such as his ability to be aware of the time stream, which makes him more aware if something is altered or otherwise out of place within it. He's also believed to have some level of pheromone powers. In other words, you really shouldn't underestimate Beast. I don't say it enough, but he truly is a beast of a superhero who brings a lot to the table. I'm happy I was able to put him on this list. Do you agree that Hank should be above Ant-Man? I don't know, but I think he deserves it, you know? Not enough appreciation for Hank McCoy. Number 6. Moon Knight. Moon Knight was considered a questionable recruit to the post-Dark Reign Secret Avengers team the Cap brought together, and yet he still makes a lot of sense when you consider just how dangerous and how capable he is. Moon Knight might live with a dissociative identity disorder, but this often doesn't get in his way of completing whatever mission he is on in his own heroic life, nor does it often affect his ability to be a hero. Still, the other heroes on the team did personally question if Moon Knight was the right fit and the right pick. Moon Knight has access to amazing weapons and tech thanks to being outfitted by Stephen Grant, another prominent persona that resides in Mark Spector's psyche, who is a millionaire. He also has tons of intel, which is provided to him through one of his other personas, Jake Lockley, who's a cab driver. When it comes to his power set, he is an incredibly skilled fighter who has the favor of a god, the moon god Khonshu, on his side, and this also makes him hard to kill because usually Khonshu will just bring him back to life. He's also got enhanced strength, endurance, and agility at night, especially if it's a full moon. Moon power, baby! Get that moon power. Number 5. War Machine. War Machine is James Rhodes, who gets his powers from his Iron Man made armor. Donning this armor, he goes by the mantle of War Machine typically, but has also been known to wear the Iron Patriot armor and also use that moniker as well. In fact, during his time on the Secret Avengers team, Rhodey's War Machine armor received an upgrade that allowed him to phase and appear invisible, but he would actually give up the War Machine mantle to later become Iron Man in secret, and then end up later leaving the Secret Avengers team when he decided to take up the Iron Patriot armor and that name. Rhodey might get his powers from his suit, but the skills and knowledge which he uses to pilot them is all his own. So even without his armor, he's pretty powerful. I mean, he's a guy, but he's still a powerful guy. Also, he has lots of suits, so he also powerful in his suits. His suits of armor. Number 4. Black Widow. Black Widow makes for a great addition to Captain America's Secret Avengers team that is formed following the end of Norman Osborn's Dark Reign. This team was one that Captain America brought together to basically serve as his Black Ops team. Their main mission was to help clean up all the messes that Norman Osborn had left about during his time ruling Hammer and the Dark Avengers. Considering that Natasha is a highly skilled and trained assassin who also has extensively reflected on the moral dilemma that comes attached to things like assassinating people and Black Ops, she makes a great fit. She is extremely experienced with walking that fine line between getting less savory jobs done, but also making sure you don't lose yourself and that you only do as much as is really necessary. Not only is she highly trained and skilled, but it's also implied that she technically has superpowers after being exposed to a Russian variation of the super soldier serum during her time in the Red Room. It's how she can stay so youthful and she looks so young forever. That Russian super soldier serum. Making sense of how is Black Widow even still alive and what is going on. Number 3. Valkyrie. Brunhilde is Valkyrie, or at least she was Valkyrie. Now there's another Valkyrie, and actually there's kind of like other Valkyries, multiple Valkyries, but I digress. Brunhilde is also Valkyrie in the comics. She ended up joining the Secret Avengers after her apparent death during the Fear Itself event. As a character, she dies quite a bit to be honest, but she usually gets to return, which is awesome. As an Asgardian, Brunhilde has powers that come from just being of Asgard. She has superhuman strength, speed, durability, reflexes, has slowed aging and an increased lifespan, and of course she can self-heal. Although as I said, that doesn't always save her from dying, which happens. Number 2. Captain America. Probably one of the most important members of the Secret Avengers team at almost all times is Captain America. Captain America was the founder of the team the first time around and formed it to help fight back against Iron Man and the Superhuman Registration Act during Civil War. It was called Secret Avengers because of the fact that the team had to be kept secret. Otherwise they would have been taken away and imprisoned due to the SRA or the SHRA. I don't know if superhuman, if those are their own letters or not. Captain America is a super soldier, a strong and motivational leader who also has super strength, speed, agility, speed, I said speed twice, but he's really speedy, I guess, and endurance, all thanks to him being exposed to the super soldier serum years ago in World War II. So he's not just super valuable as a leader, but he's also super powerful in general. Also, he's Captain freaking America. That's just having that name. I feel like if you're Captain America already, you get some kind of power level just from people being like, oh, it's Captain America. Number 1. Nova. Nova is Richard Rider. He basically came on to act as a Secret Avengers powerhouse when Captain America originally banded this team together after Hammer was disbanded, which I think means he gets our top spot by default. Also, Nova is just insanely powerful due to him being the host of the Nova Force. He only ended up sticking around for the first arc of the first Secret Avengers series volume, as he had to go do some cosmic stuff and he was pulled away, but he was still a member for a time, so we can still count him. Nova is insanely strong, fast, durable, can self-heal, can fly, also having the ability to fly through space, and he's super smart, as he has access to the Xandarian world mind, basically giving him access to all the knowledge of Xandar. So yeah, he's got it all, baby. He's got the strength, he's got the wits, he's got that sweet look in his awesome suit with his awesome helmet. He's He's got it all. Except he doesn't have the time to be on the Secret Avengers for too long. That's what he doesn't have. He lacks time. Number 10, Louise. Louise is not a major character in terms of being a huge mutant or key villain to mutants in the current series, but she is someone who will likely end up becoming a close friend and ally of Wolverine's. She first appeared in issue number 1 of the newest Wolverine series that started in 2020. I actually remember reading that first issue when I was in New York City right before the world went crazy. Oh my, what a time. Memories. Louise is a member of the Night Guard, and while she dropped off after issue 1, as we keep coming back to Dracula and the Vampire Nation's going-ons in the Wolverine series, she too has resurfaced. Louise was given a suit by Forge to help slow her transformation into a vampire after she and her Night Guard were attacked and either killed or turned. She once more teamed up with Logan as they went head-to-head with Dracula and his loyal subjects, and likely she'll be back again as this slow burning story continues to be developed. In fact, I think this is going to be like the big story before the end of this current Wolverine series, whenever we get there. Number 9, Cyclops Lass. So Cyclops Lass might not be one of the most important characters on this list, but I still think she is a character you should get to know because, well, she's just a cool character. I really like Cyclops Lass. Cyclops Lass is Beatrice Buddy Bartholomew and is the leader of the Children of the Atom. By the way, it took me a minute to realize when I first heard of this fan-composed mutant-inspired teen hero team's name that their group name was another phrase used for mutants and even the X-Men back in the day. It's pretty cool when you realize that. Neat stuff. Cyclops Lass appears to have powers similar to the X-Men member and often leader, Cyclops, but in reality we learned that it was actually alien tech which gave her team their powers, allowing them to appear like mutants and like some of their favorite X-Men members. Still, Buddy is a cool character, and while Children of the Atom has ended, I do hope we get to see more of its team members. Buddy made her first cameo appearance in Marvel's Voices issue number 1 and her full appearance in Children of the Atom issue number 1. Number 8, Cosmar. Cosmar is one of the new mutants, if that makes sense. She first appeared in issue number 9 of the newest series from 2020. Currently there are 2 different groups of new mutants in that series, the one based on the mutant island nation of Krakoa, who are truly feeling those outcast vibes right now, and currently are like the Shadow King's lost mutant kids, and the other traditional new mutant team who is more focused on space adventures and other international exploits. When Cosmar's powers first manifested, it resulted in the death of her parents. Her powers cause her to suck people into her nightmares, as she creates a reality warping sphere surrounding her. All those who touch or interact with it run the risk of being sucked in. And I believe Forge actually made her a suit as well, as Forge is just making everybody little things to help them with their powers, to help her sort of control those powers so that they wouldn't be so disastrous. Number 7, Gimmick. Gimmick is a new mutant who first appeared and had her powers manifest in Children of the Atom. She was the one member of the team who actually ended up making it to Krakoa due to the fact that she was a real mutant, in addition to also being a major fangirl of the X-Men. But aside from her being a mutant, Carmen Cruz is also good friends with the fellow Children of the Atom, with Cyclops Lass, aka Buddy, probably being her best friend on the team and also her secret crush who she's in love with. Another thing that I love about Carmen is that she also is the person that makes all the costumes on the team, and she's super into cosplay, which I just think is like super cool and super cute. We don't have a lot of characters in the comics that are cosplayers, so I really liked that element. Gimmick's powers appeared initially to be similar to Gambit's, but this was all done using alien technology. In reality, when Carmen's mutant powers manifested, it was revealed that they were shapeshifting in nature and also granted her a healing factor. Carmen made her first cameo appearance in 2020 in Marvel's Voices issue 1, but would appear fully in the first issue of Children of the Atom the following year in 2021. Also, when she did have her Gambit powers, it was pretty cool because she was like throwing basically little like clothing pins, if that makes sense, at people, which I love. Number 6, Maxime and Manon. Maxime and Manon are relatively new characters and mutants who appeared within the last year, but we also now potentially have a different version of them in the current X books. They're likely from a different continuity due to what we learned during the Dawn of X period of the current line. There's like a version of them, I think that's like 616, and then there's a version of them that doesn't actually have a reality number officially yet, but yes. Maxime and Manon, as we see them in the current timeline, are a brother and sister who together can heavily manipulate and warp the minds of others. Maxime can manipulate the emotions of his target, and Manon can manipulate and alter their memories, making the two a powerful duo when working in tandem. Maxime and Manon once served Ahab, being brainwashed into using their powers to make hounds for him. However, they would later be freed by Jean Grey, and Cable would convince her to look after them. Maxime and Manon are currently relevant because in the New Mutants series, they use their powers to make two humans attack one another and fight to the death, which is against Krakoan law. Ooh. However, nothing seems to have come from them taking this extreme action just yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it comes around at some point. Number 5. Bay the Blood Moon. Bay the Blood Moon is an awesome new character who made her first appearance in the Ten of Swords event back in the second main book from the event, Ten of Swords Stasis. She was one of the Arakko mutants who was called to compete in the Otherworld tournament, fighting to represent her nation. However, her fight actually ended up being a marriage. Basically, the Otherworld tournament was gloriously weird because it was being led by Saturnine, so we had traditional sword fights combined with lots of different kinds of battles, including puzzle solving duels, food eating competitions, dance-offs, and even an arranged marriage. However, it also all worked out as Cypher and Bay were seemingly both enamored with the other, as they were both masters of language and communication, but who struggled to understand one another, which fascinated them both, especially Cypher. They were both married and were each awarded a point, as it was considered a shared victory for both sides. Also, the art in the issue of Excalibur where they get married is just so good. It's so great. I love it. Number 4. Chen Zhao. Chen is not a mutant, nor is she an ally to mutant kind. She is just the opposite, their enemy. After coming up against the Marauders, trying to inspire mutant hate in her people as a public figurehead, billionaire, and anti-mutant activist, she ended up allying herself with Ham and his Verendi. Still hell-bent on destroying mutant kind's reputation as heroes, and now especially focused on doing harm to the band of mutant heroes that we know as the Marauders. Chen Zhao made her first appearance back in 2019 in Marauders issue 1, which once again, if you haven't read any of this comic, why not go back and start with that first issue in Chen's first appearance. Currently, Chen is Hominis Verandi's White Bishop, and she's definitely a villain that I think is going to be more prominent and keep getting like more badass, which I love. Number 3. Dolores Ramirez. Dolores Ramirez is another non-mutant, but someone who is a very important character within and around the X-Men universe currently. She is the head of the X-Desk, and no, I don't mean that she worked with Jonathan Hickman to bring our current line of X-Books to life. Within Earth 616, she is the one who presides over the United States government X-Desk, which monitors, keeps tabs on, and ultimately kind of spies on the mutant nation of Krakoa and its major players and political stratagems. The X-Desk is a department within the CIA. Dolores once offered to help fellow CIA agent Jeff Bannister, ally of Wolverine, who had been working with him, but he turned her down. Dolores was also one of the lucky few to get an invite to the Hellfire Gala and met with Storm in secret during her first appearance in Marauders issue 11, where she was rewarded for leaking some important information about poisoned medicine to the mutants. So while she's watching them, she also kind of seems pretty friendly. Number 2. Arakko. Arakko is both an island and a mutant, just like Krakoa. In fact, there was a time when both Krakoa and Arakko were joined together, but years ago they were separated. Arakko made their first appearance in Powers of X issue number 4, and later on we learn of all that went on there with the island, including the mutants who inhabited it and their connection to a vastly important mutant, Apocalypse. Following the Ten of Swords event, Arakko attempted to reunite with Krakoa, but both islands decided they were no longer really interested in one another, and the time had basically changed them. They reluctantly rejoined until a more suitable option was found for Arakko and the mutants of Krakoa. In planet-size X-Men, some of the mutants banded together under the direction of Magneto to terraform Mars and move Arakko and its inhabitants, the mutants of Arakko, to the now alive planet. That's what happens when you terraform a planet, you bring it to life again. I actually didn't know that Mars was considered a dead planet until I read Planet-Size X-Men, and I was like, wow, I feel like I'm also learning some science facts, which is great. Number 1. Genesis. One of the most badass of all the new characters we've gotten recently in the world of X-Men. Genesis is the long-lost wife of Apocalypse, who also was one of the main leaders of Arakko. She ended up fighting against Annihilation and becoming its new host in order to save her people. Uniting both the Amenthi and the mutants descendants of Arakko. Donning the mask, she became a leader of the Amenthi demon army, but also lost a part of herself in the process, as the Annihilation mask possessed and corrupted her. However, during the Ten of Swords tournament, she fought against her husband Apocalypse, who managed to free her from the Golden Helm of Annihilation, taking it for himself. But Apocalypse's will proved strong enough to resist its influence, and the mask was then transformed by Saturnine into a much less influential and corrupting staff, which was then gifted to Genesis. Genesis made her first full appearance in the 2019 X-Men series in issue number 12, but we wouldn't learn that she was Annihilation until much later.